Yes.
The Leipzig army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. This is Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1625 of the War News Stream. And tonight we have very big news out of the Middle East and out of Europe, as always. Right now, we're hearing that Saudi Arabia is preparing for a massive Iranian attack from the proxy forces, and apparently that's coming very, very soon. Also, Iran has begun launching missiles at ships in the Hormuz Strait again today, amid the alleged talk of a deal that's apparently not happening from the looks of it. And also, a huge drone attack's been overwhelming Russia and hitting all kinds of targets once again today. And we have very big news, and it's good to see you all once more.
And of course, we're going to be covering, if I can get that out properly, the past 24 hours of the news from around the world, as we have been able to hear of significant developments within the Middle East, Eastern Europe, the Federal Republic of Germany, East Asia, and also additional news from around the world, as Saudi Arabia has now announced that they are preparing a significant defensive alliance made up of multiple countries, not just including Pakistan, but including many others within the Gulf states, as they are largely suspecting and preparing for an Iranian attack upon their soil. At the same time, we have also gotten reports that Iranian-aligned Iraqi militias, including significant elements of the Popular Mobilization Forces inside of Iraq, are preparing to conduct major and overwhelming drone attacks and hybrid attacks against Saudi Arabia to target and destroy a large amount of their critical infrastructure. Meanwhile, we have also been able to hear that the Yemeni Houthis have conducted a major offensive today, striking the Saudi city of Najrah and leading to around 10 to 11 wounded as a result of that strike, and also conducting major ballistic missile attacks against Yemeni government forces in the southern areas just north of their defensive lines near Idlib. From what we understand, this attack was heavily damaging and did result in the deaths of dozens of Yemeni armed forces soldiers that were manning the front line at the time of that massive barrage. We also were able to hear that in the midst of all this, the Republic of Iraq is continuing to mobilize more armed forces within the green zone of Baghdad, as the Iraqi government is attempting to try and cramp down on the activities of the Popular Mobilization Syrian front and other militias that are Iranian aligned within the country, but we are not incredibly sure if they're going to be seeing any amount of success in that regard. Simultaneously, multiple different statements have come out throughout the day from U.S. officials stating everything in between the strait being open already, the strait's going to be open, and the strait isn't open, but it's going to be open in some point in the future. We have also heard that the Islamic Republic of Iran has announced that the strait is not open and that they are still largely sticking to their demands. And we've also been able to hear some confusing reports from their end where some officials have stated that the strait might be opened at some point in the future, but once again, that comes with significant caveats that the United States has to meet most, if not all, of their demands and drop all of their war goals against the Islamic Republic of Iran for the strait to be reopened. We have also been able to get some other reports out of the region as well that the state of Israel has apparently dismissed 2 top governmental officials due to the failures of the original strikes that were conducted against the Islamic Republic of Iran and bringing a swift resolution to the conflict. And we have also gotten reports that at the Ben Gurion airport, several KC-135s and KC-46s are now leaving the airport after it's been deemed that a deal might be close, and so now U.S. forces are withdrawing from the area, so little by little, not in massive floods, but at least in a small number, back to EUCOM, and will be close and nearby, if needed, to be flying right back into CENTCOM and to conduct further operations against the Islamic Republic of Iran. While all of this has been going on inside of the Middle East, we have also gotten some brief and occasional updates out of East Asia, as we finally have found out what the 2 U-2 spy planes deployed from the United States of America towards North Korea were used for last night, which they were used for the reconnaissance of a North Korean ballistic missile launch that was conducted into the Sea of Japan and also the East China Sea and the Yellow Sea as well. From what we are able to pick up on, at least to this point, the United States sent the U-2 spy planes after gathering satellite intelligence showing military movements by the North Koreans within their territory, and these U-2 spy planes were sent out to be able to get live reconnaissance and also high-fidelity photography of the preparation, the drills, and also the operations involved in North Korea launching these ballistic missiles, possibly giving us some additional information, at least for the Department of Defense, on whether or not North Korea is learning anything incredibly important that's changing a lot of their tactics and even their deployment procedures on fielding and using ballistic missiles within the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. China has also been alleged to be providing military satellite photography. It's not really an allegation. It's more so of a hardcore fact, if we're being frank, to the Islamic Republic of Iran, according to statements that came out from the press today. And we've also been able to hear that the government of Taiwan, the Republic of China's government, is now attempting a probe inside of their nation to see why in the world some of their top employees and some major industries are appearing to be poached by the People's Republic of China. Additionally, we have also seen that the Ukrainian armed forces have held their lines today, causing extreme damage in the rear line areas on the supply lines of the M14, and we have also been able to hear that the situation in Russia is continuing to deteriorate. We have also been able to get further details on the attack on Leipzig airport last night, and now that we have larger details today, the story is a very grim and damning one that makes it much more clear that the Russian Federation was responsible in some form for the attack. But before we get on into all of this news, we actually have breaking news coming out live on air at this moment. So Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so right now at this very moment, there are still hundreds of drones swarming over the skies of Russia, and we are seeing that apparently there's been a major hit in the city of Kerch, which is right next to the Kerch Bridge, by the way. We're seeing right now that Ukrainian attack drones just swarmed a Russian army equipment base in that city, setting it ablaze, and it looks like the 13th military compound in the city is currently on fire and it's taking a major hit. We got some photos out of this, and it looks like there's maybe an electrical fire that took place, and then there's also some big explosions happening in the background too.
And here we can see that white sort of a wisp that we can see in the smoke or the light coming from the ground, which may suggest that an electrical fire occurred within the area. And in the second picture, we can see the more usual orangish haze of the fire after it's been well cemented and planted in the area after the Ukrainian attack, which appears to have hit the 13th military compound, a Russian military equipment base within the area, which we believe has largely been supporting the air defense and naval defense operations of the Russian armed forces and the Russian army that have been operating in their attempts to defend the Kerch Strait from drone, missile, and boat attacks, which have been incredibly prevalent in the earlier parts of the war and led the Russian Federation to create a permanent garrison around the bases of the Kerch Bridge and also within the strait itself to stop the Kerch Bridge from being completely hit and knocked out by a continuing series of Ukrainian attacks, considering that the threat was incredibly high early on in the war. So it looks like the Ukrainians are possibly trying to mitigate or degrade those capabilities for the Russians to conduct successful defenses forces over a duration of time around the Kerch Bridge, suggesting that they might be prepping the Kerch Bridge for some sort of an attack in the future, or maybe conducting these actions largely to degrade and destroy most Russian armed forces capabilities in the whole of the Crimean Peninsula, not really pertaining to the Kerch Bridge in any real strategic sense. But moving us on out of that breaking news update, it is time for us folks to move on into all of our news, starting with those largest stories of the night, and those will be taking us directly and immediately into the Middle East, as we have been able to hear some very interesting developments over the course of this day. Once again, the Middle East is a largely confused muck of a situation, especially on the US's end, as there's not really a clear story or a storyline that the US government is even going with at this point. But in the midst of this murkiness that we are seeing in the US's foreign policy stance, there are a lot of clear indicators and actions that we've seen today from other involved parties that is giving us an understanding that the conflict in the region does not appear to be subsiding. It just appears to be entering a new phase, one where the United States may not be directly involved any longer, but many of the Gulf states will continue to suffer generally the wrath of the Islamic Republic of Iran, whether the United States makes a deal or not right now, in the aftermath by Iran using their proxy forces against the Gulf states in some form of revenge. Because of this sort of a threat, we have been able to hear today that Saudi Arabia is now working on a major defensive pact as the leaders of Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and Turkey, including the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, and the Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan, are scheduled to hold a summit tomorrow in Jeddah. An official agenda has not been released, but we were able to hear further information that two regional sources with direct knowledge told Reuters that Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan are set to sign a joint defense agreement in Saudi Arabia on Friday. In short, this is a new defensive pact, apparently adding on to the one that Saudi Arabia and Pakistan had prior, that is now going to be including the Republic of Turkey into its defensive pact framework in the future. This is also coming in the foreground of the threat that the Iranian-aligned militias within Iraq and also the Yemeni Houthis, an IRGC-aligned force that has been a significant faction in the Yemeni civil war, are preparing to, and the Houthis have conducted today, significant attacks against the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia once more. And the reports did come out from the areas of southern Iraq, where we were able to hear that Saudi Arabia was preparing and bracing for multiple coordinated attacks by Iraqi militias working with Iranian-backed Houthis, according to Saudi officials who spoke to some U.S. press outlets. At the moment, we understand that the situation is a fairly threatening one for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, as Saudi Arabia's missile defense or missile interceptor defenses have largely already been depleted due to the ongoing war with the Islamic Republic of Iran, and we're also understanding that the United States of America currently does not have the munition stockpiles to be able to provide the Saudi Arabians or the Gulf states with emergency stores of large-scale missile interceptors to be able to try and mount a defense. Unfortunately, much like the United States of America and its current air defenses, Gulf state air defenses are currently not designed or operated in a hybrid form, much like the armed forces of Ukraine operate in the current Ukraine war, where it is a mix of kinetic air defense systems such as smaller air defense guns and then larger caliber air defense missiles that catch ballistic missiles that are able to bypass all of the other forms of air defenses. This means that even if Saudi Arabia was watching a pro-Iranian Iraqi militia launching 20 to 30 drones into Saudi airspace, they're either going to have to use the Saudi Air Force to shoot those down, or they're going to have to use the MIM-104 Patriot batteries that they have within their country, which usually fire missiles approximately about $3 million a pop, to be able to try and shoot down each and every single one of these drones. Meaning that as far as the spending side of things, and also the industrial output side of things, Saudi Arabia would not be able to keep up due to the exorbitant cost of firing off a Patriot to shoot down each and every single one of these drones, and also the U.S. industrial base is not able to keep up with the exorbitant demand for these missiles, and currently there is a significant shortage that we're hearing of in the United States and within this region. Not only that, also including Ukraine, showing that this situation would not easily be overcome anytime soon. This leaves Saudi Arabia vulnerable to these sorts of attacks, and not only that, it leaves them vulnerable to the south as well, from the much more armed and more active Yemeni Houthis, which were extremely active over the course of this day. We were able to hear that the Yemeni Houthis conducted a major offensive action against all enemy groups as far as they were concerned, including the Republic of Yemen's government and also the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia as well, with several ballistic missiles landing in the area of the city of Najrah, only several miles across the Yemeni-Saudi border, and apparently wounding a significant number of people. According to the Iranian Tasnim news agency, they stated that a Saudi-led coalition claims Yemen attacked Najrah, and the Saudi-led coalition claims claims that Yemeni forces targeted the city of Najrah in southwestern Saudi Arabia. According to the Saudi-led coalition, 11 people were injured in the attack, and the Yemeni armed forces have not yet issued a statement on the matter. On the flip side, while the Iranian media was reporting of this attack in Najrah, we were able to hear that the Saudis did also confirm that the Houthis had attacked them, and as a result, there were 11 wounded. The injured included 7 Saudi nationals, including 4 children, 1 Yemeni national, 2 Egyptian nationals, and a Pakistani national. According to Major General al-Maliki, he explained that the Houthi terrorist militia carried out these attacks in a random manner, targeting civilian and populated areas. He said these actions constitute a violation of international humanitarian law and customary international rules through the deliberate targeting of civilians and civilian infrastructure. He added that the Coalition Joint Forces Command will continue taking deterrent measures against these terrorist attacks to ensure the protection of their civilians, which is largely stating that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia will most likely be conducting what we can almost describe as a slap across the face for the Houthis in the next couple of days, and they will most likely be conducting another light airstrike campaign against the Houthis, highly likely targeting the capital of the Houthi lands, Sana'a, the former capital of the Republic of Yemen, and also the port of Al-Hadida. Possibly also some other frontline positions may be hit within the Sadr government, which largely straddles most of the border that the Yemeni Houthis currently share directly with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. We have heard in the background that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is trying to weigh in a large number of options at this moment for a possible response against the Yemeni Houthis, which could lead up to a multitude of different outcomes, including an armed invasion of the territory in support of the Republic of Yemen's government, now Saudi-aligned, to see that the Republic of Yemen is able to solidify their control over the entirety of the region, and also once again bring the Houthis to heel, stopping the threat to shipping through the Bab el-Mandeb, and also removing a significant proxy force of the Islamic Republic of Iran from controlling a vital waterway or conducting direct attacks against critical Saudi oil infrastructure at the ports of Jazan and also at the port of Yanbu. At the moment, a lot of people aren't talking about this situation and are wondering whether or not the Saudis will be okay in the event of this sort of a major strike by a large number of Iraqi militias, which are numbered in the hundreds of thousands. I believe the PMF's forces that are Iranian aligned are approximated to be 200 to 250,000 strong on the ground in terms of personnel, and the Yemeni Houthis are also equally strength as well, somewhere around 160 to 210,000 ground troops, according to publicized figures and claims. And Matthew, what are people thinking about this right now, considering that, and what are you thinking about it as well?
Okay, so Saudi Arabia is very concerned. They are sending out warnings all day long today that apparently they're bracing for massive attacks from the Iranian proxy forces, not just in Yemen, but also in Iraq as well. We've also seen that there's been major deployments of the Iraqi security forces in Baghdad, specifically sending out security forces to the area of the Green Zone, which is where the U.S. Embassy and the consulate is located inside of Baghdad, Iraq. So clearly, there is an actionable intelligence that there may be an attack coming soon, and it appears to be almost a certainty at this point. So Saudi Arabia seems to be in some big danger. So do you think the Saudis will be okay if the attack is conducted? 43% said yes, the Saudis will defend successfully, while 40% said no, Saudi Arabia is in huge danger, and 7% said the attack will be prevented by the Iraqi security forces. And I wouldn't put a whole bunch of faith in the Iraqi security forces. I really would not, because there's really not good reason to do that, really. All they're doing is deploying forces to simply protect the embassy and the Green Zone, and that's purely it. They're claiming that they're deploying their forces to prevent the attack, but there is way too many of these Iranian proxy groups inside of Iraq to prevent it. It's impossible. So I would say the attack is likely going to happen, and the Saudi Arabians, they have defenses, but we've seen over the course of the last couple of weeks that the coastal oil sites have taken some pretty drastic hits from the Houthis, and if Iraq attacks and Yemen attacks Saudi Arabia simultaneously, that could overwhelm Saudi's defenses. So they probably need U.S. assistance, is my guess, and I'm not sure if the U.S. really has the ability to assist them in a big way right this minute. So I'm actually with the 40%. I think the Saudis are in huge danger. And once again, this shows people that Iran is not serious about peace, or they wouldn't be trying to get their proxy groups to attack our ally, which is Saudi Arabia. But Enforcer, what say you?
The Saudi kingdom is in great peril at this moment because of the threat being caused by the popular mobilization forces of Iraq and the Yemeni Houthis within the Houthi lands in western Yemen, because we have already seen that in prior attacks at the port of Jazan and also at the port of Yanbu, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia does not have the capability, nor does it have the requisite munitions to be able to conduct proper air defenses against ballistic missile attacks to critical oil infrastructure, which is not only important for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia economically, but it is also incredibly important for global oil stability. This is a significant threat, especially considering that the Popular Mobilization Forces in Iraq could be involved as well. The Popular Mobilization Forces could try and cause crippling damage to the oil nodes that we see and the ports along the east coast of Saudi Arabia in the Persian Gulf, which have largely been inactive up until now because of the Strait of Hormuz blockade. But if the blockade ever ends or is lifted, the damage to these ports could be critical and further delay vital Saudi oil from being able to enter the global markets, stabilize prices, and start stabilizing global supply. So I would actually have to say, folks, this is a fairly concerning thing, because I would like to say that the Saudis certainly could defend themselves on their own, and no disrespect to the Saudis, they do have quite a large and prominent armed force within their country and their borders, but the problem is that the ongoing war in Iran has heavily depleted a large amount of their interceptor stocks, and for what we know, not only is the United States running low, but the Saudis are also running low as well, meaning that they would only be able to defend against a limited number of attacks at the very opening of some sort of a proxy offensive against their country, and after probably the first several volleys in the first opening days, their skies would largely be wide open. The Saudi Air Force would be playing a game of whack-a-mole that if they ever see one on radar, they might be able to shoot it down. That's if they even see it on radar. A lot of these drones are small enough that they might show up as birds on the radar and therefore be filtered out as background noise and not show up as a viable target, meaning that if the ground air defense forces are not able to function properly, which we generally would assume they wouldn't be able to within the first opening days, these proxy forces could cause untold damage to the oil infrastructure of Saudi Arabia and who knows what else. Considering that they're proxy forces and they're generally not beholden, at least like the Islamic Republic of Iran, to any direct counterattacks that could physically damage or harm their material base or plant, it would be really hard for the Saudi Arabians to be able to respond, and it also gives these terrorist forces a leeway to be able to conduct attacks that the Islamic Republic of Iran may not even be comfortable doing out of the blue. These proxy forces could try and hit power plants within the country, water desalination plants, and if they hit the combination of those both, we could see a major humanitarian crisis affecting millions, if not tens of millions of people, affecting one of our largest allies within the region. So I would actually say that they are in great peril. I don't really know how we can avoid this peril, because unfortunately, much like the Saudi Arabians, we're also running low on air defenses as well right now. So I'd have to say it's quite the pickle, and it's also quite the issue, because there really isn't a way to avoid this sort of a threat, either for the Saudis or us trying to help them. And this could cause significant damage, is the best way to put it, and a major threat to global oil supplies once again. So, with that in mind, moving us on out of that poll, I also wanted to show y'all something really quickly, because I think this is an important thing to note as far as the forces go inside of Iraq. This is the Popular Mobilization Forces emblem here. As you can see, it looks to be a militia of the Republic of Iraq. But the thing that's a little bit interesting about this is that since 2014, this group has largely been operated directly by the supreme leader, and nowadays we would assume the IRGC Council within the Islamic Republic of Iran, as an armed force, an extension of the Islamic Republic of Iran's will within the territory of Iraq. In the present day, the last number that they claimed in 2022, they claimed that the force was about 230,000 strong, and has a significant base of operations throughout most of southern Iraq. We don't really see the Popular Mobilization Forces working all too heavily in northern Iraq. That's generally where the Kurds operate out of, and they have something of a running feud at this point. Both of them do, and the PMF conducts attacks against the Kurds, and the Kurds generally attempt to defend against them. But the Popular Mobilization Forces have significant basings within Basra, Nasiriyah, Kut, Baghdad, Tikrit, and also Ramadi, including Fallujah as well, which is the kind of a suburb, in a sense, of western Baghdad, although it is a pretty good distance away. This means that the Popular Mobilization Forces has generally a full ground army at its command, at least in terms of forces, and it also has some limited offensive capabilities, as they do have integrated armor inside of their armed forces that was provided to them by the Republic of Iraq's government before they started to become extremely radicalized and were generally hijacked by the IRGC and the Islamic Republic of Iran. So this could not only pose a significant threat in the air with hybrid drone attacks against Saudi Arabia, there is a possibility that they could try and conduct armed raids or incursions into the northern Saudi borders via Iraq, and they could also threaten U.S. forces within Kuwait as well if the Iranians started to wield them quite heavily, and if the leadership of the Popular Mobilization Forces, or the PMF, were willing to undertake such risky actions. So this unit, or more so this force, is a significant threat to the United States and also our Gulf state allies throughout the entirety of the region, much like the Houthis are really more so exclusively to Saudi Arabia. And speaking of that threat that the Houthis also pose, similarly to the PMF, we were able to see today that not only did the Houthis conduct that major attack against Hadran directly along the border with Yemen, but they also conducted a major ballistic missile attack in a rare form against the Republic of Yemen itself, something that we haven't seen, at least lately, often, as the situation has changed drastically within Yemen, largely in favor of the Yemeni government, or the government of the Republic of Yemen, which has been able, due to a lot of Saudi efforts, to reclaim a humongous amount of the territory that they once had, and also unify a large number of the distant factions, including the Hadrami elites, which were operated by the UAE, directly under the Republic of Yemen's direct control. Because of this, the Yemeni Houthis have found that they are starting to see that the manpower figures and some of the industrial output of the country is more so turning against them, and they're now seeing that they're possibly losing the numbers war, because instead of a lot of the anti-Houthi factions fighting amongst each other in small skirmishes, the full weight of the country is able to be bared against the Houthi lands, which is this region in green. This seems to be putting the Houthis into a position where they believe that an offensive action may be needed to destabilize the situation and regain vital territory, manpower, and industrial capabilities that the Yemeni Houthis, well, actually not the Yemeni Houthis, but the Republic of Yemen's government currently now possesses. Earlier this day, ballistic missile launches were conducted against Yemeni troops, and we were able to see some video clips here showing the ballistic missiles after they had been launched, and in a moment we'll also show y'all the impacts and the damage that was seen on Yemeni armed forces positions south of the Houthi lands near to the capital of Aden.
It's really wild. Like, I know I've mentioned this before, but the fact that Houthis have so many munitions and they're launching attacks on Saudi Arabia, they're trying to hijack vessels, leaving the Red Sea Strait, and also not only that, but also, clearly attacking the Yemeni government now. I mean, the Houthis are getting really out of control. It looks like that problem's begun to fester to the point where it's boiling over.
It really does, and also I think this is going to further the idea and analysis that we had, that the IRGC must have been supplying them heavily during the peacetime periods with hundreds of ballistic missiles, whatever they could spare, to stock them up with them, so that way if the Houthis were ever isolated, generally like they are right now, they would still be able to wield a large amount of firepower against their adversaries for a very long amount of time, apparently months, from what we can tell, because it doesn't really seem like the Yemeni Houthis are running low at all on ammunition, at least from what we can tell at this point. We also were able to see the direct impact and aftermath of one of these Houthi strikes against the Yemeni armed forces position on the southern border that was very close to the front line with the Houthi forces. Here's the clip showing the aftermath, and to give you all an idea of kind of what we're listening to, it sounds like an ammunition cook-off in what was some sort of an ammo storage building.
Looking awful like popcorn.
Yeah, it really sounds just like it. Sadly, in the course of this attack, it was stated that around 50 or so Yemeni armed forces soldiers were killed in the Houthi ballistic missile attack, which is one of the largest single losses that we have seen, at least in recent years, in the Yemeni civil war due to Houthi actions. I also saw someone say, who in the hell has supplied the Houthis to this degree? And if you want to know, the answer is Iran. The Iranians have supplied the Yemeni Houthis extremely, because the Yemeni Houthis, much like the Iranians, are actually a Shiite group of the Islamic sect, and because of that, they were able to find a lot of theological or ideological common ground with the Yemeni Houthis inside of Iran, and therefore they were able to align the Houthi cause and the Houthi armed forces with the IRGC. And with that unification, Iran has supplied over the entirety of the Yemeni civil war tons of munitions to the Yemeni Houthis. Most of the weapons that the Houthis have right now that they are using on the ground, in the air, or at sea has been provided directly by the Islamic Republic of Iran via generally what we could call questionable supply routes that are generally conducted by sea from Iranian ports and directly into the Houthi lands in western Yemen. This is why they're so well supplied, and almost every single proxy force within the Middle East that is affiliated with the IRGC is also equally well supplied. That's why the Iranians have such a large arms industry, and a lot of people would say, well, that's kind of shocking, actually. When they look at the Iran war, how does the Iranians have this many TELs and ballistic missiles? Well, the reason why is because they're making so much money selling their own weaponry to their proxy forces. The proxy forces in these countries run rackets or generally operate like an official government and collect taxes, or if you want to call them protection fees, to be able to raise money to then buy Iranian weapons at discount. But even with the Iranian weapons being bought at discount, the Iranians are still making money off of their weapons sales to their own proxy forces, which in turn allows the Iranian government to then spend that money on improving and increasing weapons production in their own country. Therefore, continuing the cycle of instability throughout most of the region via the proxy forces, and also allowing the Iranians to build up the major arsenal that we've seen and have to go up against really since the beginning of this year. So there has been quite a lot of this going on. I know that this might be shocking for some people, but when I tell you all that the Iranians are generally the main destabilizing factor within the Middle East, they truly are. If you look at any of these countries in the Middle East right now, and they look to be unstable, the Iranians are there. If you look at Gaza and say the Hamas seems to be a destabilizing factor, they're backed by the IRGC. Lebanon's destabilized because of Hezbollah, also backed by the IRGC. The Iraqis are destabilized because of the Popular Mobilization Forces, which are heavily backed by the IRGC. So are the Yemeni Houthis, which are also backed by the IRGC. Every single one of them has a tie that goes back to Iran. The only one that doesn't is ISIS, which has been a mild destabilizing factor in Syria throughout the course of this year and appears to largely be self-sustaining, and it's such an extremist group that no country can actually get behind them and support them in any meaningful way. Nevertheless, though, a lot of people have also been hearing about the U.S.'s ongoing dealings with the Islamic Republic of Iran, moving us on out of the Saudi situation and on into the Strait of Hormuz. There has been a lot of developments in many different ways over the course of the day, literally saying everything that you could say, if and or the other. So I'm going to try my best, folks, to sparse through this so that way we can get to this poll and talk about it. But so far we were able to hear as one of our first pieces of news today that Oman and Iran agreed to a temporary framework to reopen the Strait of Hormuz to commercial vessels. The deal has been endorsed by GCC members with official announcement involvement expected from the UN's International Maritime Organization and the U.S., according to an official. That was also quoted from MS Now, the publication which reported that information. We're not entirely sure how accurate or true that is, at least at the moment, but it looks like the Omanis are saying that there may have been some sort of progress today on reopening the strait. However, when we go to the Iranian side, it appears that the situation is very different. A statement was put out by Iran today, where they said that northern and southern Strait of Hormuz corridors will be eliminated and traffic will shift to a middle corridor under joint Iran-Omani management. They then went on to add that they still want to charge fees. So the situation's still the same it was. If there is a deal, we're basically giving up control of the strait indefinitely to the Iranians, and they're still going to be trying to charge a fee. Because according to Reuters, Iran is seeking to impose a service fee, or a protection racket, on ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz equivalent to 5 to 7% of the vessel's cargo value. So a 7% tariff at maximum on every single dollar of cargo that's going through the strait. So $1 of cargo, 7 cents of that has to be paid to the Islamic Republic of Iran. Under the proposed deal, Iran would also control inbound traffic through the strait. So the Iranians are still going for pretty much the whole pie. They want to be able to control all of the ships going into the strait, which basically means they have a monopoly on the management of the strait, because they can just cut everyone off from entering and cut them off from going to the oil loading ports. And they also want to still charge the fees, as 7% fee on all cargo traveling in and out of the region. We've also been able to hear that while all this was going on, The Iranians claimed again today that they conducted another attack on another ship within the Strait of Hormuz. While many of people are saying that there's a deal right around the corner, they conducted another attack on another ship again today, according to their own claims. We never got an UK MTO report for this incident, but the fact that the Iranians claimed that they conducted an attack at all is something that is wildly fascinating, and once again showing us that they're not willing to really make a deal, and they're still trying to strong-arm the United States and also the world inside of the strait. To give you all a little bit more backup details on this, the Iranians had to report from Qashem that the locals that were reporting explosions on the island weren't really hearing anything at all, because it was just them firing at ships within the Strait of Hormuz. And they also added that on again, because we were able to hear from FITUX Network that the Iranian state-owned Tasnim News reported that the explosions on Qashem Island were a result of Iran engaging hostile targets at the entrance of the Strait of Hormuz. And we did have eyewitness reports confirming that there were 2 loud explosions on the island of Qashem, and that apparently was because of the anti-ship batteries opening up and launching their missiles, which is where the loud explosions came from. And in the meantime, just to add, folks, we have to add to the beauty of it. In the meantime, while everyone else is saying there's a deal to possibly open the strait, and the Iranians are also launching missiles into the strait still at ships that are getting a little bit too close to it, the president came out today and dropped this banger. It's sort of open right now. We control it.
Oh, that's kind of a little bit of a shift too, isn't it? So I thought it was completely free and clear before. Now all of a sudden it's sort of open right now. We control it. So how can it be like sort of open? Like that doesn't sound very precise.
Well, also, I thought that yesterday he said we were very close to a deal to reopen the Hormuz. Now we're saying that it's open and it's sort of, and we control it anyway, so we don't even need a deal. So we're back to that whole insanity, that whole stupidity of
Yeah.
claiming we control it, but we still need a deal to open it.
And also, if the question was, has a deal been reached to reopen the Strait of Hormuz? I mean, to say it's sort of open, it's like that's not answering the question about whether or not there's a deal or not. He dodged that question entirely from the sounds of it.
Yeah, I mean it is the usual operations of the US government these days, folks, as you all know. I don't even think we have to get into more details about that. That speaks for itself. But a lot of people are talking right now about that 5 to 7% fee arrangement that the Iranians are still trying to push forward, with the stipulation that they also control all inbound traffic via the Strait of Hormuz, which gives them generally unitary control over whether ships are moving through or not. And so, Matthew, what are people thinking about that right now, and what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so Iran is now seeking to impose a 5 to 7% service fee in the Hormuz Strait under a new possible deal, at least according to reports. So, what are your thoughts about that? 37% of the audience said the U.S. will not agree to something like that, while 30% said really no deal is possible with Iran, regardless of if it's 5 or 7% or 10%, doesn't really matter. A deal simply not possible. And 27% said the U.S. will agree to that deal simply to end the whole thing. And really, honestly, I just don't think any deal is possible with Iran. I'm actually with the 30%. Now, whether or not the U.S. would actually agree to something like that, I would say it's a solid 50-50, because at this point, the U.S. is getting desperate. They're trying to negotiate with Iran knowing that they're not operating in good faith. So the fact they're negotiating at all suggests to me that they might be considering possibly capitulating to a certain degree, but I don't think Iran will let the U.S. even capitulate. They're not going to let that happen. As we saw the last time that an MOU was signed, that fell apart completely because neither side could really uphold their end of the bargain, and it was a very favorable deal for the Iranians, and they still couldn't uphold their end of it. So I just don't think it's possible, really. Also, by the way, that's absurd to try to charge a 5 to 7% service fee. It's like a service fee for what? I mean, that's just another name for a toll, essentially. But Enforcer, what say you?
It's literally a protection racket. Like, it's literally a mafia-style protection racket. You know, like the Iranians are out there going, man, that's a nice ship you have right there. Be a real shame if someone blew it to pieces. You ought to pay us money to make sure that doesn't happen. You know, it's literally the same thing. This is like protection from what? It's like the literal only protection they're providing is against their own anti-ship forces blowing the ship to pieces.
Yeah.
So it's literally a protection racket.
Yeah, and also I'd heard a rumor that Oman might have been wanting like 3% or something for their service fee. It's like, so, okay, so if that turns out to be accurate, so not only does Iran want a service fee of 5 to 7%, but also Oman wants some money out of it too. It's like, okay, so I guess now everybody's going to violate international law and start charging tolls in an open waterway. It's like, what are we doing here? And also, you remember that talk a while back, the U.S. was talking about charging their own fee. So, I mean, essentially, everybody's wanting a little piece of this pie at this point. I mean, everybody's wanting some money out of the strait.
You know, folks, by the way, just to tell you all this, if the Iranians did get a fee like that every single day, because a lot of people are going, oh, well, that's nothing. I just saw someone say, that's nothing. I pay that in Spokane. Well, what the what the hell do you mean? 100 ships, 100 oil tankers pass through that strait every day. Do y'all know how much that is? A 7% fee on the value of that cargo if the price per barrel of oil. Let me do the math here really quickly. I'm going to do this with that calculator so that way we don't butch it. Well, let's say each VLCC is about 3.5 million barrels per ship. So let's put in 3.5 million barrels. And right now, Matthew, what is the cost per barrel of oil? It's like 80 something, 80, 90 or so, somewhere around there.
So it looks like it's currently about $78.
So let's do 3.5 million barrels times $78. So that means that one ship is carrying $273 million of oil, and there's about 100 of them going through the Strait of Hormuz every single day. So let's times that number by 100. And now, folks, let's multiply that whole number by 7% at the maximum value. And the number, folks, is unbelievable. It's $1.9 billion a day in fees if every single ship passing through had to pay their toll to the Iranians. That is unbelievable. That's $1.9 billion a day. That's an unbelievable amount. Do you know how much, folks, that equals up to a month? That's $60 billion a month free to the Islamic Republic of Iran, forked over to them monthly indefinitely.
It seems like that might wipe out the profit margin for the oil companies exporting the oil out of the area. That might wipe out a huge part, if not all, their profit margin to a large degree. So essentially, essentially it could still be a blockade if that's actually what they're charging right there. Because if the oil companies can't make money out of it, then what's the point of sending oil through?
Yeah, it's a absolutely ridiculous sort of deal. Like if the president's saying we're not giving a dime to terrorist states, I think it's giving a dime to them if we agreed to something like that, because we're giving them $60 billion a month. The world is in perpetuity, so that way we can get oil out of the region. That is absurd. Think about that, folks. $60 billion a month. Do y'all know what that equates to every year? That would be about $720 or so billion a year. That's more money than they make as a nation economically for their GDP. I think that's like 120% or 140% their GDP value as a whole nation. And they get that every year. Think about what they could do with that. They could build up an armed force in that region and speed up that nuclear program to where it's done in a week.
Yeah, that's just really stupid. I don't think the U.S. will agree to it. Hopefully, because if they did something like that, they're either going to cause oil companies not to want to ship oil out of the strait, or they're going to cause the oil companies to skyrocket the price to try to make up for that difference. One or the other. So I don't know. It seems like a horrible idea to even consider something like that. Hopefully they don't agree to it.
Yeah, this is an absolutely ridiculous sort of a deal here. I would hope that they don't agree to it, folks, but while we would say that they probably wouldn't agree to it because it's absolutely stupid and insane, they agreed to something almost very similar in the first MOU round, which was absolutely stupid and insane, because we're going to give them about $660 billion in concessions, everything combined. So it's not out of the question they might try and agree to something like that, but it would be absolutely stupid to do it. We're quite literally funding an enemy of the Republic in spades every single month if we agreed to something like that. While all that went on in the Strait of Hormuz, folks, I have to bring y'all back to the Houthi lands, because there was one thing that I forgot to mention. We have gotten a rare appearance of the Yemeni Houthi spokesperson today, and he made a lot of interesting comments. So I'll let y'all hear it right from the man. So let me skip forward past our musical intro here, and let me let y'all hear him for a little bit, and then I'll read the summary of what he said over the course of these 3 minutes above it after a brief moment of listening to him.
بيان صادر عن القوات المسلحة اليمنية بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قال تعالى فلا عدوان.
So anyways, that's enough of that. Y'all can see these.
You just saw, man, wait a minute. Hold on a second. I'll make that full screen again. Those eagles' wings are a little bit too straight. The wings are a little bit too obtuse. I don't know about that eagle. That eagle there is hawking it back to a time of different stuff, I would say. But also, this guy right here just seems like he's soulless right here. He just wants to feel something. He wants to feel anything. Look at how deadpan his eyes are. And he's just summoning all of his energy to get this out, and the way he's doing it right now. It's I don't think this is style. I think he's just dead on the inside.
Man, Here in a minute, man, he's about to sit there and go, "Hello, everybody. Inshallah, in the name of the Houthi government, we are making sure to reclaim the Lebensraum Geschlechtverlangen in den deutschen Welt." It's like, bro, calm down, man. Calm down. It's like, bro, he's losing it here. But beyond that, though, folks, a little Houthi Himmler here. He had a couple of things to say, and I'll make sure to say them kind of in the way that he said it, but we'll just summarize it with the English text that we have. The Houthis have announced strikes against concentrations of Saudi forces in Al-Tabir and Al-Tania and other positions associated with the Saudi-backed 1st and 3rd Emergency Brigades using ballistic missiles and drones. This marks another step in the recent escalation between the Houthis and Saudi Arabia. Until recently, much of the group's pressure campaign had centered on the self-declared maritime blockade, forcing commercial vessels to turn around and carrying out attacks, shipping transiting the Red Sea. So that's basically what he said, in the way that he would have said it if he could speak English, but he's too busy, like, doing his whatever the hell that is. He's busy doing that whole thing that they're doing on the video. So moving us on from little Houthi Himmler there, basically, it's the best way to put it. It's time for us to move on out of the Houthi lands, and time for us to move on into the Republic of Iraq. Because while the Republic of Iraq has been hearing, like we have all heard recently, folks, that the popular mobilization forces are preparing for major attacks on Saudi Arabia, the Iraqi government has once again started to deploy its actual army, the Army of the Republic of Iraq, to try and put down and suppress these sorts of actions. We were able to see major deployments throughout the entirety of the green zone within Baghdad. But the problem with this is, folks, is that while they have like a presence in Baghdad, they have a presence nationally. So it's like, what is this one deployment in Baghdad going to do?
Man, what's up with these armored vehicles? Like, who makes them? What even are those?
So these are actually American. I forgot the name of these little things, but we gave some of them to Ukraine. But I don't know what it is, but they mod these things to where they look terrible. I think it's like
Yeah,
solid black
really.
paint.
Yeah, well, it's like, why are the wheels sticking out so far on each side? It looks like it wasn't built to be that way. I mean, these look janky for some reason.
So let me actually show you this. I can show you one of these. You want to see it? Are you curious enough to see what they actually look like?
Yeah, let's see a normal one.
So this is the M117 armored security
Oh,
vehicle, which is what they really are, but they make them look awful.
yeah, I think they've like extended, like added some spacers to the wheels or something like that to extend it more from the body. It's just like this looks proportional, like on the normal one, but on the one they've done, it's like, what in the Carolina squat hell? Go back to the other one. What in the Carolina squat hell have they done to this thing? It's like it looks wrong.
They done something jank to it, I'll tell you that. Like, man, they ain't done something terrible. We can also see them moving around some of their Humvees as well, that with that same sort of a paint job. I just don't know what made them think that looked good.
I don't either. And also, these forces here are heading to the green zone. You know, Iraq's saying that they're trying to put down the Iranian proxies inside of Iraq from launching an attack on Saudi Arabia. But it's like they're not these Iranian forces are not in the green zone. The only people in the green zone are the diplomats. That's the only people there. So these forces aren't doing anything.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's like, what are they really doing? It's a token action. Like, they're like, oh, we're trying to do something. It's like, well, what are you doing about all of them in all Fallujah, Basra, Kut, and everywhere else inside the country? They're not doing anything to them. So this is nothing but a token action by the Republic of Iraq's government to make it look like they're doing something, when in reality, they're certainly not. We see a couple of more of them rolling around through here as well. Someone said, doesn't matter what it looks like if it works. Well, they ain't working. Like that's also the thing that adds to it. They ain't really working because over the course of the whole war, they have stated time and time again that they're going to really bring the PMF under control, and they never have. So it's kind of the same thing as the Lebanese government. They're not really doing anything, and it's not really working. So not only is none of it actually doing anything, but it also looks jank, which really kind of adds to the whole flair of the thing. But moving,
Man, I love you. Iraq is like it's like Lebanon. It's like, you know how Lebanon's always like, oh, we're dealing with like the Hezbollah threat and stuff like that, the Hamas threat. I think it's more Hezbollah is really their problem. They said they're dealing with that, but they never have really truly dealt with it. They just kind of let them fester. They even let them have seats in the government for a very long time. I'm not sure if they still do or not. But it's the same thing with Iraq. Iraq really doesn't have the ability to be cohesive enough to actually do away with the Iranian proxies, and neither does Lebanon either. And also, there's kind of a lack of willpower to do it as well, in my personal opinion.
man, remember when we first heard about that? Oh yeah, we're gonna deal with Hezbollah deal, and it came from none other than the Penguin.
Oh.
Bro, I remember that, bro. I remember we were like, bro, this guy looks like the Penguin from like, like the Superman comic books.
Man, I'll tell you, his head looks like the floor before you put the polisher on it.
Man, honestly, man, like real. But
You know what I'm
honestly,
saying? Like, it's like a floor that's had the cleaning solution put on it, but they didn't bring the polisher and like back over the floor to like make it actually have a sheen to it.
man, you're not far off. That actually is pretty realistic sounding, at least compared to what his noggin looks like there. But moving us on from that, folks, it's now time for us to get into a little bit of brief detail from Israel before we move on out of the region. We were able to hear that some U.S. tankers may be withdrawing from the Ben Gurion airport today, but that was according to an Israeli news source, and generally we have discredited them informationally on everything outside of Israel, so I'm not really sure if they're being accurate on everything that's going on in there, but that's what they're saying at least for now. Additionally, they also made the claim that there was some alleged removals of the Mossad intelligence director and the the head of Mossad's intelligence directorate and Iran division due to the failed overthrow of the Iranian regime early in the war and its failure. So
Dang. So they ousted the guy simply because they couldn't overthrow the regime. It's like they should have known. Like whoever, like they shouldn't just overthrow the dude for or like get rid of him for that reason. It's like whoever approved that at the top. It's like it's their fault too. It's like they should have known that wasn't going to work.
man, I mean, honestly, they shouldn't have, but you know how it is. You know how it is in Israel. Like, if we're being completely frank, like if you don't deliver the extremely high results expected of you, then you get removed from your position. And they expect quite a lot, folks. They expect like 6-day war miracles on the weekly these days. So if you don't achieve that, then you're getting out of there. But moving us on out of Israel, it's now time for us, folks, to finally move on out of the Middle East, and it's time for us to move on briefly into a news topic that we have not covered for a minute, or really haven't had enough news to give it a small little moment in the sun, which is East Asia. We have finally been able to find out, folks, why the U-2 spy planes were flying to North Korea last night on air, which we covered that they had arrived in Japanese airspace, and one of them turned off their transponders after making a sharp turn directly towards the Korean border, and another one then flew into South Korea with its transponder still on at an altitude of around 53,000 feet, which is exceptionally high. We understand that those U-2 spy planes were actually attempting to observe a ballistic missile that was launched towards the EC, Japan, and South Korea reported. So it looks like they were trying to get some intelligence in real time from the North Korean ballistic missile launch that was conducted into the EC, which is the Sea of Japan over here. So that's a little bit interesting. And also, folks, we actually talked about this a little bit before stream, and Matthew was like, well, how in the world did they even know that that was going to be happening to send the U-2s well in advance to be there right in time to be able to watch this launch? And we ended up coming up with the conclusion that it must have been because of satellite photography that U.S. satellites were able to get that started to show more movements within North Korea in preparation for these launches. Probably a clearing of the launch areas, like making sure that they're immaculate, because it's also going to have a big propaganda effect within North Korea, and they usually publish these sorts of pictures from these launches within the North Korean newspapers throughout the country, so they have to make sure that it looks pristine. And that might have started to show the U.S. intelligence that they were preparing for a ballistic missile launch that was going to be coming around in the near future, and because of that, they sent the U-2s out to observe it. The reason why they want to observe these sorts of things is because there might be some information to reap from them. Like, for example, the knowledge that North Korea is learning from the ongoing war in Ukraine, which they've been involved in to some extent. We may be seeing that this is changing the way that they're conducting their preparation and firing procedures, and this could also start to show us that the North Korean military may be heavily innovating in terms of its tactics and doctrine, which have largely remained idle for the majority of the regime's history. The actions and really more so the military doctrine that we see that North Korea has used throughout the modern era is very similar to Soviet era doctrine from the 1970s in basically every single way, and hasn't really innovated a whole lot because they've never been exposed or really honestly exposed in any way to either a force that knows what they're doing and is willing to share tactics and doctrine with them for them to develop their own capabilities, or they haven't really been involved in a modern war to really figure that out either. Now that they're involved heavily with the Russians, which are sharing a lot of knowledge with them, and they've also sent their own expeditionary forces to get heavily involved in the war in Ukraine, it may be that they're learning a great deal across the board, and they're now innovating their doctrine and tactics to be able to reflect what they have learned. And that's probably what we're
Oh
trying
yeah.
to figure out, is how far that's come along.
Probably so, and we have to rely on satellite intelligence, and also, like for example, sending over aircraft like the U-2. I will say, I see a lot of people saying, "Well, why did they send over the U-2, which is a manned reconnaissance aircraft? Why didn't they just send over a drone or like simply use satellite intel for it?" Because I saw Shadow Knight say, "Wouldn't they have just used satellite intel for the launch, and why use the U-2 planes?" There are some limitations to satellites, like satellites in the modern day, according to what we know in the public, have very, very high resolutions, but there are things that can limit that. For example, if there's cloud cover on a certain day when they need to take imagery, that can cause a problem. They might need to send in either a drone like a Global Hawk or possibly a U-2 manned aircraft to get pictures of the ground. That's one reason. And also, by the way, we don't really have a whole bunch of human intelligence inside of North Korea as the United States. We really don't have that because it's notoriously hard to get agents into North Korea or recruit agents because of how closed off the so-called Hermit Kingdom actually is, which is North Korea. So for that reason, we're almost completely, I would say 90 to 95% reliant on satellite and signals intelligence to learn what's going on in North Korea.
Here's actually a picture from a U-2 spy plane that we sent up to observe the Chinese balloon during the 2023 China balloon deal. Many of y'all remember that if you were here on the channel. That was one of our hugest moments of outrage during those years of the last administration, was allowing the Chinese balloon to fly all the way across the United States before shooting it down. But this is actually a picture to show y'all a little bit of a U-2 in modern operation, but they have been used quite a great deal, especially to get a separate angle on an incident, because also, folks, you have to remember, a satellite usually is about, if I'm not mistaken, most military satellites are in a farther out orbit. They're not in low Earth orbit. They're actually, I believe, in outer space orbits around the Earth, and therefore they have a very top-down view of everything that they're going to be looking at. So if you take a picture of something, you're looking at it quite literally like we're looking at Google Maps. So if the U.S. military is like, "Oh, I wonder what's going on in North Korea," let's send a satellite over, and then you snap a picture, you're going to see this. However, a U-2 spy plane, even flying at 53,000 feet, is able to use its camera cradles, which have been heavily updated and modernized in the modern U-2s, to be able to get a side view of the incident. While they're still a lot higher up, usually at the range that they're at from the target, which is several hundred miles, because they have a several hundred mile view angle, as long as the visibility is good, the camera is able to get a high fidelity view, generally like you're looking at it from a camera on the ground, or something kind of close to it, a lot better than you would get from a satellite. And that also could give us a lot more details and information that we wouldn't be able to tell possibly from a satellite. It also may just be that we didn't have a satellite over North Korea during that time window, and so they decided to send the U-2s to fill in that surveillance gap to be able to keep an eye on it as well.
Now, here's an interesting question for thought because the U-2 is an extremely old platform. I think it entered service in like 1956. This platform's been around for decades and decades and decades. But the SR-71, which was also a reconnaissance aircraft, it entered service, I believe, like I think it was around 1964 or 65 or something like that. It actually entered service after the U-2. But for some reason, we don't use the SR-71 anymore, but we still use the U-2 spy plane. I wonder why that is.
It's because of the low cost of operating this. The SR-71 was very
Oh, you think
expensive.
so?
Yeah, the U-2 is very cheap to operate.
Or we might have a successor to the SR-71 that nobody knows about yet.
Oh, get the hell out of here. You're going to start talking about
I
that
wouldn't
Dark
doubt it.
Star. Oh, God. Man, that Dark Star is a myth. It doesn't exist.
I'm not talking about the one from that movie, that Top Gun or whatever. I'm talking about like just like a newer variant that's like very fast. Because the thing about the SR-71, it was extremely fast, and that was its advantage. So the U-2 is not super fast, but it flies extremely high, and also it is cheaper to operate, certainly so. But I would suspect they might have a successor to the SR-72 that they're currently using in some way or another. I don't think they're relying completely on drones for that.
I don't know. I don't know, because like the whole design concept of the SR-71 is kind of obsolete, because the SR-71 was designed with this concept of extreme speed to be able to outspeed enemy air defense missiles, and to also generally try and be, if it wasn't outspeeding them, out of their altitude range. And towards the end of its service life, not only was it exorbitantly expensive to operate, but it also was now within range of surface-to-air missiles that not only could catch up to it, but also intercept it. Like the North Korean incident that's famously known, where a surface-to-air missile only came away from several hundred feet from directly impacting the SR-71 and destroying it. And so it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to field this kind of a platform when you can have a satellite in space that is able to kind of do the same thing that the SR-71 did, because the SR-71 was only designed for direct overhead photography. I don't believe it was designed for long distance side profile photography like a U-2 can do. And so that also was another issue. So it's like, why in the world would we have this thing when we could have a satellite that basically does the same job and can also come a wider area when it takes its photography? And so this one was retired, but the U-2 still had a place. And also, that's what they look like now. They look busted. Like, these things look worn to hell, man. Like, these are pretty off looking. But, you know, you can send these up. They're extremely cheap, and you can get the side profile views because the camera, I believe the photography equipment is actually mounted on the side of the fuselage, near to the rear, kind of near to the air brake area, if I'm not mistaken. And it's able to look out sideways from the aircraft. But you also have a cradle where you can mount it where it looks directly down on the ground. But I don't think those are used anymore from what we know. So, you know, I would say that's generally why the U-2 is probably still used. And as far as the SR-71, its successor probably was the satellites because of its intended role and purpose, and also it became obsolete and why it was so fast and why it could fly in that form.
I don't know. Maybe one day we'll find out what they're actually using, possibly. But I think there might be a successor out there to the SR-71 that we just hadn't heard about yet.
Maybe, but I don't know. In my personal opinion, folks, I don't know. I don't think so. But moving us on out of that, and on into China really quickly, we've also been able to hear that, according to The Insider, they say that the Chinese, in short, have been providing satellite photography to the Islamic Republic of Iran. Nothing new there. We kind of all knew that already, but they went into a little bit more detail about it. Basically, what they did is that they spent their all they basically spent entire satellites airtime in space and photography capabilities to give the Iranians all the information they could in real time about where U.S. military forces were in the Middle East during the first and second phase of the conflict, to try and provide them with more accurate strike data so that way they could hit actual fighting units, including air defenses and aircraft of the U.S. armed forces within the region. So absolutely nothing there. Like nothing there that's new. But moving us on down into Taiwan, we also were able to hear that Taiwan is probing 17 Chinese firms for allegedly that is, 5-6 Network has picked up on the allegedly term, illegally poaching high-tech talent, especially in semiconductors. In the span of almost a month, 330 agents searched 64 locations and questioned 114 people. Companies are accused of disguising themselves as local or foreign firms to recruit Taiwanese experts, threatening the island's technological edge. So it looks like the Chinese are picking on someone new. Like they're trying to poach talent from the Taiwanese. I remember when they did that to America back in the day. I wasn't alive for that.
Back in the day, they still do it today.
Man, but back in the day, it was big. Like, you know, they were like, "Oh, you can build a factory here. Why don't you take your techs in America that run these factories and bring them over here to train their Chinese replacements?" Like, that was like the big one that made them skyrocket into what they are today. They still do it today, but that was the first wave of it. Like when everyone started to offshore to China, and the U.S. company was like, "Hey, by the way, you're getting laid off in like 2 months, but can you go to China and teach your replacements how to do your job? Thanks, we'd be appreciative." And then they send them over there, and then they come back and they'd be like, "That damn Chinese stole our jobs," which they did. But beyond that, though, that's the news that we have from East Asia. Now, folks, before we move on into the war in Ukraine, and also a very big bombshell development that we got out of the Leipzig situation last night, or the Leipzig attack, we want to make sure to thank each and every single one of y'all for being here so far over the course of this night. We have had a peak viewership tonight of 16.1 thousand people, and 63,000 people have watched this stream in the first hour and 3 minutes. I gotta say that we're always honored and greatly appreciative of each and every single one of y'all spending your time here and enjoying the show. We truly try our best to make sure that our news coverage is high quality and well reported every single night, and we always love to know that everybody's always tuning in to hear what's going on around the world. Now, before we move on into all of this news that we got up here in Europe, I want to make sure that we take a couple of questions from the chat. So, Matthew, what do we got here?
All right, so jumping into our first super chat of our question segment here, this one's going to go to Earth Lover, who put in a $20 support. And thank you very much, Earth Lover, for supporting the channel once again and helping to keep the channel running once again. And Earth Lover said, if North Korea can send troops to the front, why can't Europe's most threatened states? Do they not value their freedom, and passivity and calls for de-escalation have neither kept them safe nor de-escalated anything? And Slava Ukraine.
That is a very interesting question, actually, right there. Very interesting question indeed, Earth Lover. And I would have to say that my answer to that would be that generally the reason is that they're scared that that'll create a third world war. Because while Ukraine is fighting the war against Russia and North Korea can join in, it is a little bit different if a European country tries to join in, because Ukraine has no direct way of really attacking North Korea or causing them any damage, so they can kind of be indirectly but directly involved. If Europe gets involved and starts sending troops into Ukraine, Russia could start a war along the whole NATO border, and the war could generally kick off. So that's generally the reason why we haven't seen that yet, is that most countries are trying to avoid the war if they can, but I'd have to say that generally at this point in time, it's an unavoidable war. It is coming around the corner, and with NATO continuing to generally try and put its head in the sand and pretend like it's not, they're only enticing the Russians to work closer towards escalation and a full-blown war with them. So a big thanks to you for support, and how about the channel to keep running, Earth Lover, and Slava Ukrainian, long live the Leaf Spring Army, and with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a $20 support from JMO75, and thank you, JMO, as well, for that 20. He said, were you guys pro taking our forces out of Iraq and Afghanistan? And it would have been nice to have a bigger presence. And of course, Iran would go for nukes. And me personally, I wasn't against taking the troops out of Afghanistan, but I was against the way they did it. Like, the way they did it was chaotic. It obviously resulted in unnecessary death, the way they took the forces out of Afghanistan. So, you know, giving up Bagram, that's a controversial one because that was I would argue, a strategic standpoint there, a base. And now we hear that China is moving in and apparently taking it over from the sounds of it. So that's obviously not a very wise idea. So I would say I wasn't against it, but, you know, it's a little bit complex. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say it's a very complicated one to answer, because realistically, if we're speaking strategically, it would have been a lot better to stay there. But politically, it become completely inviable or unviable in the United States to remain because the war in Afghanistan had become extremely unpopular. So that's kind of the reason why we had to leave. But if we're speaking in a realistic sense, I would say that it would have been a lot better that we stay, because that would have allowed for us to operate Bagram Air Base, which is the only air base that we had that could directly threaten China's eastern flank. Now we don't have any way to directly threaten China's eastern flank, so that is an area where they're relatively secure. The coastline is the area that would be under threat in an actual war, and now they have an area that generally could be a safe place, in a sort, for China to be able to prepare, prep, and operate from, where a large amount of their industrial base, or all of their industrial base within that region, would be very hard, if not difficult, to reach. So I would say that in that strategic sense, it was quite the blunder. However, I would say that with how the war had been going on in perpetuity for 20 years, and the Afghan government that we tried to create never was solidified because we really weren't giving them the capability to get solidified. It was just going to be an endless war that we would have kept fighting forever to try and keep the Afghan government alive and try and keep our forces there, that would have never truly subsided. Because to really, like it's actually a very complicated thing, folks. If we want Afghanistan to actually stabilize, we would have to pull them out of the medieval era that they live in as a country. The Hindu Kush has proven to be such a geographically impossible area to navigate that infrastructure has not been properly developed throughout most, if not all, of their country. And because of that, it is very hard to have a centralized government conduct any form of control outside of Kabul's borders, the city of Kabul's borders, because there really is no way for them to easily move around the country and to easily keep the country under control and put down any kinds of uprisings. And not only that, if there's no economy to support the upkeep of that infrastructure, then the infrastructure becomes a money sink with no end in mind. So if we really wanted to see any kind of success in Afghanistan, we would have had to just basically give them a Marshall Plan and start building up economic infrastructure, most likely in Kandahar, which was the flattest and easiest region to start developing industry in, and then allow the Afghan government to use that new tax base to be able to build new road infrastructure that allows for them to conduct centralized control nationwide rather than the tribalism that continued to permeate because none of those infrastructure improvements or industrial or economic improvements were made. And then that becomes a question of, would the U.S. public be willing to have the U.S. government basically just shell out tens of billions of dollars to try and start developing Afghan industry, and that probably wouldn't have been that popular either. So in reality, I would say that it probably was better that we withdrew. But the strategic impact of that in losing Bagram is quite a significant one that we'll probably be feeling for quite some time, especially in our possible responses to a war over Taiwan. But with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, and a huge thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, I would say, yes, Iran is definitely going to go for nukes, especially these days, because if anything, the United States has proven to them the value of a nuclear weapon in that they will never be attacked in this way again out of the blue because the U.S. is trying to denuclearize them. If they have a nuclear weapon, there is no way to denuclearize them. There's no attempt to denuclearize them because they're already nuclearized, and attacking them would have significant consequences. So at this point, we kind of just have to continue on with denuclearizing Iran or trying to fight the war with that intent, or we just have to accept that they're going to be a nuclearized country sitting in the most oil-rich region of the world that is not aligned to the Chinese sphere or is the United States of America. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the final question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving on to the rest of the news for the night. So what do we got?
All right, so this one goes to Salty OG, who puts in a 20 as well. And thank you very much, Salty, for that $20 support. And we do appreciate that because that does help to keep the channel running. And once again, a big thanks to you. And Salty said, why use a U2 when the US can use an RQ-180, open secret, made in 2013, so no humans are in harm's way? Is it a show of force?
I don't think it's a show of force. I think that it may have just been the asset that we had available, and there may be something involved with it that we may not know about all too well. That may have made it a more suitable sort of a system to use. It may have more advanced camera systems than an RQ-180. But like that's always a consideration because when you watch an old stinker like that get rolled out and they send two of them, it's like, well, why would they send them? And the only answer I could say is that while it's a super old airframe, the tech on board, especially the recon tech, has to be extreme. Like, it has to be extremely good for them to want to send it. Because it's like, why in the world would they send that when they could send an MQ-4 Triton? Which, from what I would know, in every metric, would be more advanced, and also it's autonomous. So, it's like, why not send that? We have a couple of them in Japan. We have them permanently based there. But instead, they send the U-2s all the way from America to North Korea. So, the only thing I could come up with to answer the question in any reasonable way, just trying to make an inference as to why, it had to be that whatever imaging systems on board are actually better than an MQ-4, better than an RQ-180. I don't know how to explain that or why that would be the case, but that's really the only reason I could assume they would use that instead of some sort of a modern, comparable alternative. So a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running, but outside of that, Salty, I wouldn't know. That would be my best guess. But a huge thanks to you massively once again for that incredible support and helping this channel to keep running. Because if it wasn't for amazing folks like you and everybody else who goes out of their way to support this channel, we wouldn't be able to make this thing a reality and keep it running and keep this show on air. And so it's time for us, folks, to move on and into Europe. We finally made it to Europe, folks. We made it through the Middle East. We made it through East Asia. It's now time for Europe. And before we get into the war in Ukraine news that we have for the day, we have been able to hear some very concerning bombshell developments that came out from Leipzig, the Leipzig International Airport in Germany, of the attack that was conducted last night. As we were able to hear that more details are emerging about yesterday's drone attack at the Leipzig Hall Airport. According to the WDR, the NDR, and the Süddeutsche Zeitung, one of the Ukrainian Antonov cargo aircraft parked next to the drone was actually loaded with military ammunition that had recently arrived from France and was waiting onward transport, according to a confidential police report. Investigators say the drone was first seen hovering between two Antonov cargo aircraft before being forced to the ground by an airport employee, where authorities discovered the attached explosive device. Surveillance footage reportedly showed the drone entering the airport from the south at around 1928 hours, landed on the apron, and remained there for several hours before being spotted shortly before midnight. According to the Interior Minister, Alexander Dobrindt, the drone was likely modified to evade existing counter-drone systems, which reportedly failed to detect it. Authorities are also investigating the second incident that occurred after the airport was temporarily closed. A DHL cargo aircraft was forced to abort its landing after reportedly colliding with an unidentified object near the airport while traveling at approximately 500 kilometers an hour. Investigators believe the object may have been another drone. A bird strike reportedly has been deemed unlikely after forensic testing because there was no guts on the nose cone of the aircraft. It looked to have been some sort of a metallic object that actually hit the nose of the DHL aircraft. This news is quite concerning if this is the case, folks, because according to the information, this Ukrainian transport aircraft, which this is actually the one that was literally right next to the crashed drone, the Be Brave like Kherson aircraft. Apparently, it was carrying some sort of military ammunition from France to Germany to then be forward loaded, most likely by rail, and shipped on towards Ukraine. Doesn't this? I mean, what more could we have, folks, to say that this was a Russian attack? It's a Russian attack against the logistical infrastructure that keeps supplying munitions to Ukraine. What more could we want?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like NATO would take action. I will say though, what type of action are we talking about here? Because I mean, if we can prove for a fact that it was Russia that was behind this, and it doesn't have to be that the Russian forces themselves did this. It could be an operative, it could be an agent that they sent over here to do this, or something of that nature. It's like if they can prove that's Russia and they don't take action, then what is the line? It's like what is the line where they say, okay, this is actually an act of war at this point? Because this whole hybrid warfare thing that Putin is now employing on Europe, it relies on the fact that there's plausible deniability in these attacks. Nobody's really ever sure exactly who did it, but I would imagine if they investigate enough and they get enough evidence, they could probably prove that it was Russia without a doubt. But I don't think they really want to, because that would force them to take action at this point, and they're kind of hiding behind that plausible deniability to avoid being accountable, basically.
I would have to say that probably is the case. But I would have to also add that it is extremely concerning they're basically conducting hybrid attacks. Because like, how far does that go? Like, actually, funnily enough, one of the rabbit holes that I brought up a while ago, the Black Tom explosion on Black Tom Island, out here near the Statue of Liberty, that was actually not really a heavily talked about one, but that was one of the main reasons why the U.S. would end up going to war with Germany in 1917, is because of the Black Tom Island explosion in early 1916, which then got heavily attached to the Germans and the German embassy and the German ambassador to the United States, von Bernstorff, who was involved in trying to conduct that sabotage attack and the destruction of the ammunition warehouses at Black Tom Island. It's like we can't really let a country like Russia do the same thing in the modern day and let them get away with it, because eventually the Germans didn't get away with the Black Tom Island incident in New York City, due to a myriad of different developments. But we've already seen a myriad of different developments with the Russians right now. There was the cruise missile impact in Poland, the multiple drones that flew into Romania, including the one going to Bucharest, the drone attack now on Leipzig, which we could largely say is definitely a Russian attack, all of the endless drone incursions that were conducted throughout the whole of last year on almost every single NATO state by the Russians over sensitive military sites, and also the continued provocations by the Russians diplomatically, where they keep saying that the West will pay, we are going to wipe out the West, we're getting ready to go to war with them. And they made that openly clear. It's like, how far does this keep going, and we keep letting it go until we finally put our foot down, not even in a way of saying let's go to war with them, just in a way of saying this is enough and anything from here will lead to a war. Where in the world does that line get met, and where do we make that statement?
Yeah, I don't think they are going to make that statement. I think short of like a direct like declaration of war by Putin himself, like something that direct, then they probably won't take action. I would imagine. I mean, at this point, we've seen airspace incursions nonstop into various different NATO states. We've seen missile attacks in NATO states, drone attacks. Now we're seeing these covert like threats towards civil aviation taking place in Germany. I mean, short of actually sending in ground troops, there's really not much that Russia hasn't done yet that they've gotten away with.
I would agree. Also, I also saw Who LFG say Germany was not the target, Ukrainian aircraft were. It's not the same thing. It is the
It's a
same
German
thing.
airport.
Yeah, it's a German airport on the territory of the Federal Republic of Germany. That's like saying, well, China fired a missile into America and they blew up like, like say like the Denver International Airport, but they were only targeting like the British guys who were in there. It's like, well, it was still on American soil and it did destroy an American airport in the process. That would be like saying, with the Saudis, oh well, that's not really the same thing. It's like Iran's only trying to target the U.S. forces in their country. They're not blowing up, like the Saudis intentionally. It's like, well, they basically are. It's like kind of the same thing there. And also on top of that, the real reason the U.S. entered the First World War was the Zimmerman telegram and the sinking of the Lusitania, which was a British steamship that just happened to have a couple of hundred Americans on board. And I didn't really see the United States government work with the argument that, oh well, they were generally going for a British ship, so it didn't really matter if we had our citizens on board or not. So I would personally say it's quite a concerning issue. It doesn't matter what nationality the aircraft were, they were attacking a German airport in the middle of Germany. But moving us on from that and on into a little bit of additional news that we got from Lithuania today. The Lithuanian military intelligence has stated that it has information that Russia is considering using Ukrainian-made drones to carry out attacks against critical infrastructure in the Baltic region, and what officials believe could be an attempt to disguise responsibility. Lithuania's defense minister confirmed the assessment, saying intelligence indicates Moscow is considering unconventional kinetic attacks and that the use of Ukrainian drones is viewed as a likely scenario. Poland has already publicly warned about this possibility in July, saying Russia had captured a large number of Ukrainian drones and could use them in a false flag attack. What is new today is that Lithuanian intelligence has now publicly confirmed that it's reached a similar assessment, making the first time Lithuania has officially disclosed this specific scenario rather than issuing only general warnings about sabotage or hybrid attacks. So as we are seeing, of course, many NATO states are still warning and throwing out the alarm bells that at some point in the future, Russia is going to conduct a large-scale, deliberate attack against NATO states here on the frontier, and they're going to try and disguise their culpability in those attacks as much as they possibly can. We don't know when it's coming around, but it's probably going to be coming around in the fall from what most intelligence reports have continued to warn, and that means that once we start entering the fall months, we'll probably be on high alert here on the channel to see whenever that does happen, we can report on it immediately. Moving us on out of that news within Lithuania, it's now time for us to move on and into the news that we have gotten out of the war in Ukraine. And so moving us on into that news, we were able to hear that within the Moscow area today, there was a fairly interesting sort of an incident that happened. We don't really know where this was in Russia, but it appears that the fuel tank in Russia quite literally suffered a spontaneous combustion. We'll show you all that right here. These sound effects are added in after the fact.
That's like after a bad day of Taco Bell.
Man, kind of rough, honestly. I think those employees kind of got the rough of it, but
jeez, that's crazy.
Pretty wild stuff. Quite literally nothing involved in the drone attack, folks. It was just a spontaneous explosion. Don't even know why that happened. We also were able to confirm additionally, folks, that at the Russian generals that were buried under a great veil of secrecy yesterday were in fact killed in the Moscow bombing. The Cheka OGPU and Russian Criminal Info learned who was buried yesterday and today at the Troikhorovskoye Cemetery. Yesterday was the funeral of Major General Valery Plotonyuk. As of 2022, he was the deputy commander of the 49th Army. Daniel Peredri, the son-in-law of the Russian Aerospace Forces Commander-in-Chief Alexander Chaiko, was also buried today, and both were killed on August 1st in an explosion outside a restaurant where Chaiko's 55th birthday was being celebrated. So we can confirm that at this point, those two Russian generals were in fact killed in the restaurant bombing in Moscow just a couple of days ago, and that their burials were conducted over the course of August 1st. Well, actually, over the course of today and yesterday, with the explosion happening about a week ago on August 1st. So this is starting to show an interesting trend at this point, folks, that the Russian Federation is trying to actively hide and kind of disguise the deaths of top officials within the Russian military by not explaining that they were killed in a bombing in Moscow.
Yeah, that's quite embarrassing for them.
Yeah, quite embarrassing indeed. But moving us on from that, we also were able to hear that massive attacks were also conducted on the internet infrastructure of a multitude of companies, including Ozon, Wildberries, Yandex, Avito, T-Bank, Gazprom Bank, and also the Russian state railways today as well, with all of their services, at least as far as their online services, ceasing function over the course of the day, with major outages being reported throughout most of the country. This is one of the larger cyber attacks that we've seen as of recently, folks, that has been conducted against the Russian Federation and is affecting critical internet infrastructure. We don't really know what kind of impact this really had on the Russian Federation throughout the day. That sort of an assessment was very hard to get, but it does appear, at least for now, that the damage was significant, at least to the internet's operation throughout the day. Moving us on from that and on into some additional news out of the Yaroslavl area, we also were able to see that the Yaroslavl oil refinery was continuing to burn throughout the day after Ukrainian armed forces were able to conduct significant attacks on the refinery last night, which we actually covered as a breaking news development at the beginning of our stream. We also were able to see as well that in some other news from the Yaroslavl refinery area, we were able to see this clip of the major fire here. We see them showing the smoke plume over the area. And moving us on from that clip and on into our next one, we also were able to see the refinery fire in this clip as well, which is also a duplicate. Unfortunately, we don't have any updates right now on Ukrainian drone attacks that are being conducted inside the Russian Federation right now. But to also cover a little bit of the updates from the damage yesterday, we were able to see the Wildberries facility in Aleshkin has largely burned entirely to the ground at this point, which we could see in this clip right here.
They were playing that emotional, romantic music. They said, "Oh yeah, oh it burned down."
Man, when they lay there in the cold, way before. Like,
They've already got the tractors and the cleanup crews out here, because Russia's all about cleanliness. They got to make sure that the site's clean.
man, honestly, man, it's all about public sanitation. And this is clearly a significant violation of public health and cleanliness here. Man, that thing is gone. Like, that thing is totally gone. Man, there's not hardly a wall standing except for the far backside.
Yeah, all that's left is the backside. That's tough to be left with just that.
Man, some people say that they shake what they mama gave them, and apparently the Wildberries only got the backside from they mama. Terrible. Allegedly. Man, but moving aside from that, we also got the satellite photography of the Wildberries facility here in the area of Aleshkin. Here is the before, and there's the after.
It looks like it got crispied like a chicken in the oven.
Man, this thing looked like it was cooking, honestly. Like, straight up cooking. Broiling, even. Beautiful stuff. We do understand that these sorts of Wildberries attacks are still having a significant impact on Russian civil logistics. We don't really know what the impact is on military logistics, or whether that claim is truly accurate. The Ukrainians haven't given us a great deal of proof yet to be able to corroborate that here on air entirely. But it does appear that these sorts of attacks are going to be continuing on well into the future, because just yesterday they attacked about 3 to 4 of these things. So we're expecting that they're going to be attacking a great deal more of them, and they may also start to attack the medium and small scale distribution facilities once they run out of the large scale facilities, which there are only a few left that have not been heavily hit, damaged, or destroyed at this point by the Ukrainian attacks. Additionally, we also were able to hear that at this moment, drone attacks are still being conducted against the Russian Federation, and these were the oblasts that had current drone alerts over them, and we also were able to see the attack vectors within the Russian Federation as well in this little infographic right here. If you take a look at that, folks, you can see that there were a couple of jet-powered drones or cruise missiles that were being launched into the country according to the reports, but a significant amount of the vectors were generally just normal propeller-powered drones like the FP-1s and others. So moving us on out of that bit of news right there, and out of those drone attacks within the Russian Federation, we can also see as well, moving us further on down and south, that it does appear that the Russian Federation is still running into some issues because of the Ukrainian drone attacks around the area of Novorossiysk and the Crimean Peninsula. But before we get on into all of that, it appears that a lot of people are talking about that Lithuanian situation, about Lithuania saying that Russia is preparing to conduct a false flag using captured Ukrainian drones. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well? And if you could filibuster for a minute, Matthew, I'm going to be trying to get a little bit of water, and so I'll be right back. But please take it away.
All right, so the poll says Lithuania says Russia is preparing to use Ukrainian drones for a false flag attack on NATO sites. And what are your thoughts? And it looks like 66% of the audience said it will likely end up happening, while about 17% said it sounds like fear-mongering and it's probably not accurate, and 12% said I'm 50-50 on this one. And I would generally say that this sounds like something that Russia could attempt to do, but here's the catch though, folks. If Russia sends Ukrainian drones into Lithuania and then they're trying to make them seem like like they're not Russian drones, that's going to be easily found out. Like, they're going to simply examine the drones and realize, well, hell, these didn't come from Ukraine. They came from a Russian attack vector. They didn't come from Ukrainian territory. So they're going to be able to suss that out. They're not going to be fooled by that. I mean, Lithuania is not going to suddenly say, hey, look, we're going to attack Ukraine because these drones that showed up here appear to be Ukrainian. They're obviously going to say, well, we have an intel report showing that that's the case. It didn't come from a Russian attack or a Ukrainian attack vector, so it must be Russia. So if that's the Russian idea of a false flag attack, that's going to fail. It may end up hurting people inside Lithuania, but the attack is not going to fool NATO into thinking that Ukraine attacked. I mean, why would Ukraine attack their partners that are giving weapons that's allowing Ukraine to survive? Why would they do that? That would make zero sense whatsoever. So that sounds like a half-baked, half-cocked plan that is probably very Russian, and it could be actually very true, I would say. But in the meantime, though, Enforcer, I think he's back.
I am back, and I would have to say that, in my opinion, folks, I would also be with a 65%. It could end up happening. It's a harebrained sort of a concept, but I generally think that it is something that they might try and do. We do know that many of intelligence reports throughout the region, from Poland, the United States, NATO, the European Union, and the Baltic states, have made it exceptionally clear that there is going to be some sort of an attack conducted on NATO soil at some point in the future. And so I would generally believe that this might be the form that they're trying to conduct it in, because they're going to try and create some form of culpable deniability, so it's not a direct armed attack that requires a literal military response. And so that way they can say, if NATO goes, "Hey, that was you." "Oh no, it wasn't us. It just happened to be that all of the Ukrainian drones that accidentally flew across the border just all hit major power plants and refineries and stuff." Kind of wild, that. Like, it's like, how believable would that be? Not really, but would they still give it an attempt? And I think the answer is generally yes. I think they would try and give that an attempt, because at least then they get some sort of culpable deniability, rather than it being a direct Russian provocation or an armed attack on NATO soil. So I hope that addresses that well, at least in my opinion. And
Man,
also,
you over there struggling, man. You out of breath coming up and down like over there cooking that water. I can hear it.
man,
But also,
I'm not gonna lie, man.
also
I'm just
by
go ahead.
Also, by the way, I'm going to go AFK for just a second. I can feel one of those unusual instances where my blood sugar is extremely low right now for some reason. I can actually feel it for once. So I'm going to try to go and remedy that real quick here in just a second. If you want to fill up, it really for you, it's just monologuing, really.
It's just
but
my business,
just to let you
man.
know.
Like, it's no monologue. I'm just doing my job at this point.
Yeah, but I'm gonna go AFK for just a second to go get a little sugar pack or something like that, so that way I can stay conscious.
Oh, he's gonna be staying conscious, folks. And in the meantime, we're gonna be keeping this thing running. But beyond that, though, I would still have to be with 65%. I think that may be the way that they try and attempt or conduct that sort of an action. So moving us on out of that poll and on into the rest of the news for the night, we have also been able to hear that out of the Moscow area, it does appear that there has been some. Well, actually, we already covered that information. So moving us on out of the Moscow area and down past Aleskin and past the drone attacks and on down into the southern regions around Crimea and Novorossiysk, we were able to see that the Ukrainian drone forces were able to cause some pretty interesting sorts of havoc around the Novorossiysk area. The Russians did end up destroying the surface vessels around the Novorossiysk area that the Ukrainians were trying to use in the attack. We actually saw one of these right here. But it does appear that the Russian Navy is getting very concerned about what the Ukrainian drone attacks might be able to conduct. There's one of the Ukrainian drones that was destroyed right outside of Novorossiysk, and we also were able to see as well that the Russians have done something that can only be described as hilarious. As many of you all know, the Ukrainians are posing a major threat to the port of Novorossiysk with naval drones and also with air-based drones. And because of these threats, we largely understand, we largely know that even the remaining part of the Black Sea Fleet, which has fled to the Vostochny Rayon, isn't even safe here. And because of that, the Russian submarines that are based here are trying to find creative solutions to avoid getting blown up by the drones that keep attacking the Black Sea Fleet that's stuck in the small little bathtub. And so the Russians have decided to submerge the subs in the port at the mooring and then build a cage over them to try and stop them from getting blown up. This, folks, I do not kid on. You can actually see the British intelligence put out something on this themselves with a satellite photograph that they were able to get by European Space Imaging. And this has a crown copyright, meaning that we can show it. But outside of that, if we take a look at this, folks, they have submerged the entire damn sub under the water. I don't even, I gotta be honest with you, folks, this thing looks like it's so far under the water, I can't even see the sail. It looks like everything's under the water. Mhm.
Honestly, better to put it under there. It's a little bit safer, but they still had to put the counter drone cage on the top of it, even with it being slightly submerged. Really,
But you know what's kind of goofy about this, though? It's like they've completely forgotten about hydraulic pressures from an explosion. It's like, like water, by the way, folks, cannot compress. So, like, if you have an explosion on the surface of the water, or even something that just gets a couple of feet in and then explodes, it's basically like a depth charge going off right on the submarine. And considering that Ukrainian drones these days are carrying larger and larger munitions, literally they're sitting there in the water in the port waiting to get depth charged and swamped whenever a drone comes in and tries to hit them. And I think that's something that they're completely forgetting, folks, is that it doesn't have to directly hit the submarine to cause damage. They could just end up slamming a drone a couple of feet into the water above the sub, blow it up, and probably cause significant damage to the hull
oh
from the
yeah.
hydraulic forces.
And once you send in baby to go deal with this, little sea baby they call it, little submersible, they might be in some deep trouble. I think they have some netting up or something that keeps the drones out, or at least is supposed to keep the drones out. But the sea baby has been known to be able to plow right through those nets sometimes, or try to hop over them, I believe. So those subs right there could be vulnerable. You never know.
Man, they could be vulnerable, man, just weak and helpless and feeble, sitting here in this port, waiting to get blown up. Like, honestly, it's like they could.
Hit it, baby, hit it.
Blee! Man, well, like, I gotta say, though, folks, this is absolutely ridiculous stuff right here. This is getting to Looney Tunes levels of ridiculousness. Like, think about it, folks. Like, you gotta think about it. In World War II, what was the big threat to a submarine? It wasn't a depth charge, like, hitting it and blowing up. It was just a depth charge getting close enough and blowing up. And close enough usually was, like, within 100 feet of the sub. Is the Vostochny Rayon that deep? No, you can literally see. You can literally see the escape buoys right there. These things are hardly underwater. Like it's just that I gotta say, you folks, the Russians are unbelievably stupid. I don't even know what in the world would make them think that this is going to be a little bit better than having them surface. It's like, honestly, I'd have them surfaced so that way, if a drone hits it, the crew can immediately abandon ship rather than being stuck underwater, literally feet away from the pier. It's like, what is the point of that? None of this makes any sense. Like, none of that makes sense. This is the dumbest thing I've
I'm
ever
telling
seen.
you. The Russians are shaking and shivering more than I am right now with low blood sugar, and they should be able to protect their stuff, but they can't though. I will say this though, I love the Australians. The Tim Tams are absolutely saving my life right now. I do appreciate that. I'm really, I tell you, it's a very rare event when I get like this, but it gets me delirious to a certain degree, and I feel like I'm on the verge of passing out. So thankfully, thank you Australia for the Tim Tam.
And so, moving on from that shout out, we're not sponsored by Tim Tam, by the way. It's just that he likes him. But moving us on from that, we also saw the Ukrainian drone attacks were able to land in the city of Feodosia last night, and a beautiful fire was formed in Feodosia City. Look at that beautiful fire. Goodness. Wonderful stuff. Also, it appears that someone attributed that picture to Kerch a little bit later on the night because we got the same one right there. I think this is the one in Kerch. So it appears that there has been several Ukrainian drone attacks within the area of southern Crimea over the course of the past few hours. Unfortunately, the Russian Federation is attacking civilian merchant ships that are trying to make it to the state of Ukraine, generally to import goods and also export grains. And we did see that another ship was hit today by another Russian drone near to the port of Odessa. Moving us on from that brief picture and that updated sea, we were able to hear in other categories that the Ukrainian armed forces have done so well. They've done incredibly well. And I've got to say, folks, y'all about to be hearing news that y'all would be shocked to hear. Moving us on down and into the area of the location unknowns, the Ukrainians announced today that the Firepoint Company's FP7X has reportedly finished its first international integration phase. And production of the interceptor body, a rough copy of the S-300, is expected to begin this month at Firepoint as they prepare to receive the Seekers from the German Deal Defense Company. Man, better not say that word around the president. He's going to be all over that company like white on rice. A deal! Like, man, it's like, oh, shit. Like, but beyond that, though, they actually put out a video of this test that was conducted today. Now, let me show it to y'all. I can't let y'all hear the baller music that they put in it, but I can show y'all the missile, which for some reason is also painted pink, a lot like the flamingo. I think this is a testing thing that they do for all of them at this point. I don't really think this was, like, flamingo specific, but here's the clip of their FP7 flamingo test launch. Look at the beauty of that thing. And here it goes, folks. There's the launch, and off the glory it goes.
Look at that. Not only do they take you out in the war, but they rob you of manhood, too. You get taken out by a pink missile. That's tough.
Man.
I even got taken out by the pink missile. No, it can't be. But where's that insurance payout?
Man, they put up that Latin at the end, bro. Like, they confused the hell out of me, bro. I couldn't even respond. Like,
oh, yeah.
Nos? Like, that hell supposed to mean?
Quis nisi nos. That means go faster.
Oh, it does?
Well, I mean, I'm just guessing NOS is nitrous oxide. I think that's what you put like in a car if you're trying to make it really go fast at a drag strip.
Let me put this in. Let's see. This means who, if not us? Okay, so you're very off. Man, like, I was about to say, like, nos is, like, at least in Spanish, like, nosotros means we. I was like, fast. I was like, nos. I'm like, I don't know about that. Like, man, like, bro, them Latin people, man, from the Roman Empire be talking about, man, I got my wagon on that nitrous. Like, bro, like, man.
I tell you what, Russia, I mean, it seems like every day Ukraine's robbing Russia of their testosterone every single day. I mean, can you imagine like minus 10 testosterone points when you get hit by a pink missile like that, especially a phallic looking one like that? I mean, that's minus 20.
Man, this missile shows up, man, and it does like a Looney Tunes trick. Right when it's about to hit you, you hear, and it stops right above you, and it goes, And it like sniffs around, and then it goes, I smell Cece's bleed. Like, then it like explodes. It's like, man, I guess that's what the intent is. I don't know why they're painted pink.
Yeah, I don't either, really. I think it's pretty good, though. I mean, Ukraine's into those dirty jokes on those missiles, though. I've seen some horribly dirty jokes they put on the sides of these, like, drones and missiles and stuff like that. It's like, I think the Ukrainians have a thing for, like nasty humor. Like, it's just a thing.
Man, they really do have a thing with it, man. The cemetery and the peak.
Not that story.
Oh, man, but moving aside from that, we also got the Russian casualty report for the past 24 hours. And, oh, look, a bobcat.
Oh, they got one. That's nice.
Beautiful stuff. Incredible stuff, folks. And according to Misdees, to keep the record, 7 air defenses is tied as the 3rd highest daily loss. And others are good. Moderate numbers and should include +4 ground robotic complexes. One day Kyiv Independent will update this infographic, we pray. Misdees has talked to me about this in the background, and I'm hoping that eventually they pay attention to the ground robotic complex category, because it is a shame that the actual MOD report includes it daily, and yet they don't. But nevertheless, over the course of the past 24 hours, we were able to see that 1,330 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed, along with 3 APCs, 416 supply trucks, 4 main battle tanks, 59 artillery pieces, 1,811 drones, 4 MLRSs, 70 anti-aircraft warfare systems, and 1 Bobcat skid steer. All in all, not a bad day. Not a bad day at all, and it's a beautiful thing to see that the Ukrainian armed forces are continuing to inflict such significant and tremendous losses onto the Russian army. Goodness, what a tragedy, folks. All those Russians getting laid out in the fields in Ukraine. It's a shame. If the Russians would just go home and stop the war, none of that would be happening. But since they won't stop, the casualties continue, and so we just have to take them more what they are and say, well, it's a good thing the Ukrainians are still holding their ground and not letting themselves get run over. Moving us on into the Vovchansk area, we were able to also see that the Ukrainians put out a little footage today showing how many fiber optic cables exist out here these days. Just look at that. We won't be able to show y'all a full clip, but that's a picture of it.
That's a lot. I have no idea how they're going to clean that up. I think the wildlife's kind of cleaning up a little bit. Like the birds are like, cutting the cables and they're taking it back to the nest and they're building like the nest out of it. So I wonder if the birds are going to start getting microplastics or something in their system.
Man, the birds already got microplastics in their system, man. The people got microplastics in their system already.
You aren't one of those people that's like the fake birds like thing, are you?
No, dude, it's just that microplastics have gotten into everything. I mean, microplastics have gotten into ice samples that are 300 years old at this point. Like, have you heard about that?
Well, that doesn't how does that work? If the ice sample is 300 years old and the plastic is not 300 years old, then how to get into the 300-year-old sample?
Somehow the molecular structure of the microplastics is in such a way that it's actually able to seep through the ice down to those levels at this point, from what we know, because microplastics are actually being found in 300-year-old ice samples months ago. I think it was
Huh?
actually a year and a half ago. Yeah, you can Google it. Like, that's a real deal.
Man, I think they're BSing or something. That sounds like some BS. Ice is solid. Like how the hell is something seeping through solid ice? It's like if it's solid, it can't seep through. I mean, I think that sounds like some BS story to me.
Well, ice isn't like solid at like the molecular or the atomic level. Like at the atomic level, an atom is like 98% empty space. So, molecularly, you can actually, like, if the molecule is small enough, you can actually kind of slip through other stuff.
Maybe I see Brian Gonzalez said it's in our balls.
It is.
I mean, people act fake maybe people are acting so fake these days. They got a little plastic in them.
Man, I got so many microplastics in me. Call me Kim Kardashian. Every piece of me's plastic.
Oh, oh,
Yeah, that might have been that might have been a little wild. But moving us on out of this whole deal of the fiber optic cables and whatnot, it is time for us to move on out of the out of the Vovchansk area. Let's see. Oh, come on, Matt. Come on, Matt. Work with us here. Work with
your
us here.
internet messed up as you cut out for like a solid 3 seconds.
Oh, well, I'm sure it was no biggie, really. But moving us on out of the Vovchansk area, it's now time for us to move on out of the Vovchansk region and on down into the area of Liman, as we were able to hear that Russian forces were also getting hit by the 66th Brigade within this area. Let's take a gander. We see the Ukrainians zooming in real nice, like there's a DJI Mavic right there.
Did
And now
people
that,
know that arsenic makes you stupid?
uh, is that why I'm becoming so stupid?
Arsenic can also make you dead.
Man, I honestly, man, I remember, man, I tried to. There was a lot of rats at a place that we used to live, folks, and so I put out some rat poison. And like the rats ate it, and instead of dying, they just would come around and go, "Duh, 2 + 2 is 5," and I'd be like, "Oh, damn, that didn't work well enough, did it?"
Yeah, I guess so. Your internet's having some serious issues.
Well, let's see here. Well, the live stream is going through fine. I mean, like the live stream is still going through fine. It might be a Discord issue. Let me pop that back up here. It might be a Discord issue, a small Discord issue. Yeah, that might be it. Or it might be on your end. I'm not really sure. But moving us on from that and on down to the Konstantinivka area, we also were able to see that the Russian forces were also getting hit by the 2nd Marine Battalion in this area in the Konstantinivka direction. We see them hitting them right there. Look at that stuff. Man, someone had to come in, insert political joke into something that's not political. Man, that's so funny. Man, like we're really, man, I'm so amused by that one. Man, it's not the oldest joke in the book. And look at that. They are hitting these Russians hard. I tell you, folks, I tell you. Moving us on from that and out of the Konstantinivka direction, we also got to see that within the Dobropilia area, the 3rd SOF Regiment was clearing out some Russians and also taking a few of them prisoner. Let's take a look at this clip. Oh, they got that music. We see them firing into the Russian positions and moving up towards their outpost, chucking a grenade in, and now moving through the rubble of some of the destroyed buildings. So it looks like they already taken some prisoners at that point, and now they're about to show us the full clip of their entry and clearance of the settlement.
Also, David Vanderbrook said, "You guys probably don't believe oil can seep through groundwater, do you?" But you see, though, David, that's totally different. You see, the ground is permeable, and dirt's not completely compact, quite like solid ice is. So it's a little bit different. If it can seep through the dirt, and also dirt absorbs stuff too, like it literally seeps it up and also soaks it up, whatever's on the dirt. So that's a little bit different, I would say.
Well, if you Google it, Matthew, the stuff is actually being found in the microplastics or in the ice. You just have to Google it. That's all. It's not hard. It was a scientific research. They found it in an ice sample, I believe, in like the Himalayas or something like that.
They have plastic in the Himalayas.
Somewhere up there.
Hmm.
The microplastics are in the rain, so it's in the snow. So then it gets up there on the mountains, and then it seeps through the ice. Like, water doesn't stay in one place, man. It doesn't just go down. It goes everywhere. Water's everywhere on this planet. And microplastics are
Also,
all up in it.
are you sure this clip is PG?
Oh, this clip is absolutely PG. See? Absolutely PG. You're getting scared for nothing, Matthew. You're getting scared. But moving us on with the 3rd SOS Regiment's clip of clearing out one of the Russian settlements on the active front and moving us further down the line and towards the area of Bahatir, we also were able to see the Worm Busters targeting and striking Russian forces within this direction. Let's take a gander at this one, folks, and let's all guffaw at the Russians' failures, like this mobile fire group vehicle, which wasn't mobile fire grouping. We also see them targeting another Russian vehicle and destroying it outright. We also see them hitting more Russian forces within the area.
I'm seeing articles online saying that some of the ice in the Arctic, has some microplastics in it, but it's because apparently it froze that way. Well, once it got there, it didn't necessarily seep into it.
Are you finding anything about debunking or proving what I said?
I don't see anything about that.
You don't, eh? Let me go see if I can find it here really quickly, folks. Not the rabbit hole here, but it's an interesting one though. Let me see. Microplastics found in old ice. Let's see here.
I see the original Nosferatu. You said no, microplastics have not been found in 300-year-old ice. These particles trace back to only the mid-20th century. That seems to be what I found as well. Like it's in the ice where the plastics actually came into existence and it froze into the ice. It's in that, but it's not in like 300-year-old ice. I mean, it's just not possible for the microplastics to get into that ice. It's frozen.
Let's see here. Oh, where'd you get that from? Reuters?
No, I mean, a part of that is common sense, and part of that is like, what part are you talking about?
Let's see here. I'm trying. Well, I found one here that's saying that microplastics were found in, let's see, in Arctic ice. It was a Reuters article in 2019, and I'm trying to see if I can find the one that talked about that because I remember reading it and I was like, dang, that's kind of concerning. But I can't. Let's see here. Found and let me just type it in direct to 300-year-old ice. Maybe it was a BS article, but I remember reading it. Let's see. And I'm not finding it. So maybe that was a.
I think you'll have to eat your foot on this one, man, because
I
I
am.
don't see anything about that.
I think I am. So hand me the salt and pepper, Matthew. It's time to eat.
Man, you were getting all fresh with me too, fresh mouth.
I wasn't getting fresh with you. I was just sitting there saying, yeah, it was a thing. Like I was pretty sure about it. I wasn't getting fresh with you.
Yeah, I always question. I always question it when it doesn't sound like that. If it sounds like it doesn't make sense logically, I always question it. Even if I don't have the evidence yet, I always say, "Hey, wait a minute, that sounds wrong."
Well, in that sense, you were right there. You were right there. I didn't get fresh with you. I wasn't fresh and fit.
Well, you certainly aren't getting stale.
Oh, thank goodness. That's a good thing.
I don't even know what that means, but if you say it in an aggressive enough way, it sounds like a insult.
Man, honestly. But with that, folks, it is time for us to move on and into the logistics front in the south near Mariupol, as we did get to confirm that there were strikes on logistics infrastructure within Mariupol, and apparently 4 different facilities were hit over the night, including this one. We also were able to see that there were other strikes in the Mariupol area, but this is largely a duplicate clip, just a higher definition one. Moving us further on down the highway and along the M14, we also got to see Russian logistics getting hit down here. They had that baller music, Matthew.
That scared the hell out of me.
Bro, that's the opening note. Beautiful.
Man, it's like the Dune music. Oh, look at this. Are there civilians' cars? What are they, stupid?
What are they, stupid? Man, well,
really? I mean, what a dummy. What a dummy. Like, why the hell would you know that they're getting hit left and right and you would tailgate the military truck?
Man, brother, right there. Bam, bam, bam. Come on, go, man. Like, it's like you're getting chased by a flying bomb. And then they get hit and they're like, oh, actually, take your time. Man, crazy.
Turns out road rage didn't pay that day.
Look at this. They're hitting
also,
them all.
Foster said, enforcers showed how saying that thing with confidence convinced others even if false. It didn't convince me. Like I didn't buy it just because I say with confidence. I was saying, hey, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. Like that, how's that plastic getting in that 300-year-old ice? I said, how's it get down there? How's it made? Where's it at? How'd it get there? Like, and that's what I was wanting to know. I was like, there's no way it got down there 300 years old. And plastics didn't even exist then.
Well, because you didn't believe me, you get a cookie. Congratulations. Congratulations. You get a cookie. But moving this on out of that clip on the M14 highway, we also were able to see a clip closer to the Chandar Gap showing what the attacks are looking like on the ground. Oh, and they got that music playing. Could it? But man, looks like hell down here.
Wow.
Looks like Dante's Inferno.
Dante's the devil.
No, Dante was just some dude that hated other dudes, and he wrote a whole book of fan fiction about everyone I don't like burns in hell, but me. I'm good. Like that was Dante's whole book.
And maybe so, maybe.
Man, that guy was the first in the modern political movement. Man, the opposition are demons and they're gonna burn in hell. Not me though. I'm good. But moving us on from that and on to the Kherson area, we also get to see more logistics getting targeted and hit by Ukrainian drone forces over here.
A mobile bush van.
Man, they about to turn into mobile landscaping crews. Like they got them.
Oh man. Oh dear.
Oh, Blanca.
Oh, that guy ran off quick. He ran off faster than ditching.
Bro, he ran off like a skull of dog, bro. He was running going, bro, like it's like running across there real fast. Like,
man, look at him go.
Oh, it was a special equipment.
Special equipment. Look, what? It's a mobile crane. Look at that. Or no. It's an excavator on the back of a chassis truck. What the heck is that?
This is an excavator truck. They have a lot of these actually. It's just that we don't see them often.
Oh. I've never seen them quite like that. That's a new piece of equipment. I've never really seen that.
So it kind of messed up looking, really. I mean, it's very messed up, honestly, like if we're being completely frank. Hi, I'm Frank. But moving us on the southern front, it's now time for us to move on up to Kyiv to get the speech from the president of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky. And so, folks, without further ado, here is the speech for the night. And so, it's quite a good one. It's a lengthy one, 5 minutes and 8 seconds. So, without further ado, here's the speech.
Speech!
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці, українки. Перша антибалістика. Наша програма Фрея спільної європейської антибалістичної системи вже в активній роботі. 10 країн є. Будуть ще приєднуватись наші партнери, ті партнери, які можуть реально підтримати. Вже про це ми домовились. Я вдячний усім компаніям, які готові працювати в рамках антибалістичної коаліції. Це провідні європейські компанії. Україна спроможна зробити свою ракету і пускову. Партнери забезпечать необхідні компоненти та критичні елементи, радари, сенсори і інше, що потрібно. Всім в Європі дуже допоможе своя і дійсно масштабна антибалістична програма. Сьогодні ми детально пройшли по тому, що ще потрібно, які кроки від нашої держави, що від наших партнерів, щоб українські виробники зброї, українські розробники могли забезпечити реальний результат. Мінімум країн світу зробили такий антибалістичний проект для себе. Україна повинна приєднатися до цього кола держав. Всі умови для цього ми створюємо. Інші робили десятиліттями свої розробки. Україна повинна зробити максимально швидко, вже щоб на рубежі 26-27 років були конкретні результати. І Україна працює для того, щоб у нас були власні балістичні ракети. Випробування показали хороші перспективи. Треба зробити це реальною зброєю. РНБО, наші розвідки, прем'єр-міністр, МЗС, Міністерство оборони, повітряні сили, оборонний кластер Brave One. Всі структури нашої держави задіяні. Але зараз виклик номер один – це російські удари. Це означає, що кожен український дипломат, усі наші урядовці Міністерства оборони повинні знати, де у світі є ракети ПАК-2, ПАК-3 для Петріотів, інші ракети для ППО. Потрібні прямі розмови, прямі контакти, нові домовленості. Я очікую, що все те, про що ми говорили з нашими урядовцями, буде реалізовано. Сполучені Штати точно знають, що нам потрібно, і що це не про щось абстрактне, це захист нашого життя, це конкретні, реальні люди. Потрібно ППО. Для цього потрібні політичні рішення. В Європі теж, в країнах Сімки теж. Щодня з цим працюємо. Я говорив з прем'єром Норвегії сьогодні про ППО передусім. Вчора говорили з Марком Рюте, генсеком НАТО, з президентом Фінляндії. Скоординували нашу активність, контакти з іншими партнерами. Сьогодні обговорили ситуацію по санкціях проти Росії. Проти тих підприємств, тих осіб, які працюють на виробництво балістики в Росії, на завезення критичних компонентів. На жаль, у багатьох країн в санкційних списках досі є прогалини. Я розраховую, що українські урядовці та спеціальні служби, наші розвідки зараз максимально об'єднають зусилля, попрацюють з партнерами, щоб у вересні можна було реально побачити, що кожна юрисдикція, яка справді має вплив та глобальне значення, заблокувала повністю зв'язки з російськими виробниками всієї цієї їхньої зброї. Також це стосується постачальників, компонентів, верстатів, тих, хто дає Росії допомогу в обході фінансових і торгівельних обмежень. Це неприпустимо, що і зараз російська промисловість, яка працює на вбивства, має доступ до світових юрисдикцій. Треба блокувати. Я буду вдячний усім нашим партнерам, які цю роботу підтримують. І ще одне. Сьогодні Кабінет міністрів України вже ухвалив перші рішення з пакету підтримки для аграріїв, виробників, які зараз у складній ситуації через російські удари по наших портах, морському коридору. Прем'єр-міністр Корецький доповів, які цілком практичні речі запрацюють протягом найближчих днів. Зокрема, пільгові кредити прийняті сьогодні на засіданні уряду, ще портфельні гарантії будуть прийняті найближчим часом. Тобто конкретне фінансування, щоб збільшити всі можливості, всі обсяги для зберігання. Будуть ще додаткові рішення. Важливо також, що ухвалені прем'єр-міністром необхідні рішення по Марганцю та іншим містам на Дніпровщині. Ганебна, абсолютно ганебна ситуація була через відсутність води. Там і дуже повільну реакцію на регіональному рівні, які відповідають за забезпечення водою. Відповідальну особу буде звільнено. Я розраховую, що в обласних та місцевих владах будуть не спати і значно швидше реагувати на потреби людей. Час війни – це час роботи 24/7. Дякую тим, хто саме так працює заради українців. Зараз тривають роботи і в Херсоні з електрикою на відновлення. Дуже непроста ситуація, постійні обстріли. Але все зроблять, щоб у людей була електрика. Це дуже важливо. Слава Україні!
And Heram Slava.
Heram Slava.
And with that, that's the end of the speech from the President of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky, here on this day of 1625 of the war. And I gotta say, folks, that we are entirely honored and greatly appreciative to know that so many of you all have been here tonight enjoying this show. We always put our best efforts, our best foot forward into running the show, onto making sure that the news is good and dandy for everybody who's watching. And I hope that it once again was tonight. We have seen that we've had a peak viewership tonight of 16.1 thousand people. And so far, 84,000 people have watched this show in the first 2 hours and 6 minutes. And I gotta say, folks, that we're always honored and greatly appreciative to know that so many people continue to show up here each and every single day to enjoy this show, this succulent Chinese meal that we present every single day. And so with that, it's time for us to get on into the questions, where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And so, Matthew, please, without further ado, take it away.
All right, so jumping into our final question segment of the night, getting our super chats, our live chats, and our Morse code decoders, we're going to jump right into our first super chat, which goes to none other than Jenna Rollin. And thank you very much, Jenna, for that a $200 support, by the way, the biggest super chat of the night. And a huge shout out to you, by the way. That is extremely generous support, and we do appreciate that extremely much. And they said, I love the U2 references, and my husband flew them for a few years ago. They are old. And the tech on board is not, and they are capable. And shouldn't the U.S. and Gulf allies ask Ukraine for a license to build their mid-long range drones and access to their databases? Now you know what's cool about your husband flying the U-2 right there. The thing I like about the U-2 is, for one, they're a little bit difficult to land, so they require a chase vehicle. They have to send out a chase vehicle to basically gun it down the runway to keep up with it, so they can tell the pilot how close they are to actually landing on the ground, so that way they don't crash the thing when they're actually landing. Did you know that?
I did know that, yeah. They also had that picture that went hard of all the YouTube pilots standing around in the flight uniforms.
Oh yeah, it's like an album cover.
Man, real. Bro, this pic goes hard as hell. But yeah, I didn't know that. Also, when they're taking off, like, they actually put these little temporary, trailing wheels on the wingtips, but to make sure that the wingtips aren't dragging on the ground while it's trying to take off. Let me see if I can pull up U2 taking off and show off those little wheels. Yeah, there they are. You see the little wheels right here. They detach once the aircraft takes off, because they're only supported by the weight of the wings above them. So as soon as the aircraft lifts up, I believe these things literally just fall onto the runway, and then they go pick them up, and then the next time the U2 takes off, they plop them back under the wings.
What's the chase car they use these days for that? Can we find that out? What's the chase car? I mean, it's got to be pretty fast to be able to keep up with this thing while it's landing.
Oh damn! They got that Hellcat, bro. Look at yo.
Man, they ain't no Hellcat. That's a Camaro, an older Camaro. Are you sure it's a chase vehicle?
Looks like that's what they're saying.
Oh man, they got the Chargers. They got the old man. It's like a 2008 Dodge Charger. I don't know if that's the Hemi version of that either. But there's a new one I think to the right of it. Maybe they're upgrading them or something. But I don't know. Like, it's kind of an older. Yeah, there's a newer one right there. That's like a police interceptor version of a Charger.
But by the way, folks, I don't know what a Hellcat is. Like I just said that.
A Hellcat's a trim of Charger and Challenger that Dodge used to make, which is like a 707 horsepower motor V8 supercharged.
Man, that's fascinating, man. That's so fascinating. It's so neat and interesting. But look at that thing, man. There was actually the one that we showed earlier landing at Fairford, the one that looks really beat up, and there's the chase car right below it.
That is pretty cool. I guess maybe a Charger can keep up with the thing while it's landing, I guess.
Well, I mean, they're not really fast, like these things are basically like jet-powered gliders. Like they can handle it extremely slow speeds. I think the stall speed on this thing is like 60 miles an hour or something. It's extremely low.
Interesting.
Let me pull it up. Stall speed of Q2. I don't want their answer. I don't want the AI's answer. It's nothing but bull. Let me see here. Let me go down to the stats. Man, apparently the people on Wikipedia love the YouTube because they wrote a book about it. But let's see. Around the world. Oh, let's see. Stats. Do they have the stall speed? Yeah, stall speed is 75 miles an hour. So it's extremely slow. I mean, like, you can land this thing at 80 miles an hour. So it doesn't take a lot to catch up to it.
I guess not, but I was expecting something, something that was a bigger, vehicle or something. But I guess it works.
Man, nah, bro. This thing real light. Like, they built this thing like a glider.
I basically, yeah.
Yeah, pretty cool. Are you choking over there?
A little bit.
Amazing. Bro, I was like,
I got real meek there for a minute. I said, oh, yeah.
Yeah, I said, it's like a glider. Yeah. Bro, I was like, oh, yeah. I think something's going on.
I'm dying tonight. I don't know what's going on, man. I'm over here like falling apart.
Oh no, get a grip, son, you're falling apart, man. Like, man, honestly, man, I'm not gonna lie, my voice is falling apart. But beyond that, though, a huge thanks to you for the humongous support and helping the channel to keep it running. And also to add to it as well, yes, the imaging systems are far more capable, because usually in the military, they always love to take the stuff that is quite old and just keep upgrading it to the extreme. I mean, honestly, folks, it's kind of crazy that the M1 Abrams is even still around, because what's crazy about it is that the M1 Abrams first entered service in 1980. So it's about to be, here in a couple of years, a 50-year-old main battle tank in service. Like, not in design. Like, it's already design-wise, but in the development phase, over 50 years old, but it was put into service in 1980. Let me see. Oh, yeah, it was designed from 1972 to 1976. So this thing was designed in the middle of the 70s. So as far as how old the Abrams is in concept, it's over 50 years old already. And you know, once it enters the year of 2030, it's going to be a 50-year-old tank. Yet this thing is still around, and it's because it's been upgraded so much. Let me see here if I can show y'all. So this was what the M1 prototype looked like from General Motors, which General Motors is the one they went with. They didn't go with Chrysler, but that's what the M1 Abrams looked like as a prototype in its first formative phase. This is what the first M1 looked like, which had a 105mm gun and absolutely nothing of it that it has these days on it. And over the last 50 years or so, they've just kept upgrading these things to where they went from looking like that, which some people will be like, well, that basically looks the same as it is now. It's very different. But it went from looking like that to now the modern M1A2 SEP, if I can find one of those. Let's see here. Where is it? Where is it? Come on, they gotta have an M1A2. I mean, like, it's a little bit ridiculous that they don't. You know, where the hell is this thing? Let me keep going until I find an M1A2, folks, because that's the most advanced one we have. They just keep showing M1A1s. It's like, where's the M1A2? Damn it! It's like that's the one the Army uses. Like the Marines don't even use their tank. Why is so much written about them? So, oh, here we are. The M1A2 SEP V3. They have done a whole lot to keep the M1 Abrams relevant and running. They've upgraded the gun. And the gun was upgraded once it became an M1A1. They went from the 105 rifle barrel to the 120mm smoothbore barrel. And so that gave it a humongous increase in firepower compared to the 105. It also gave it a humongous increase in range and accuracy as well. Also, by the way, folks, if y'all didn't know, the M1 Abrams barrel, like the 120mm Rheinmetall gun, it's actually a smoothbore. It has absolutely no rifling in it. So the rounds are only guided generally by their kinetic speed, and also some of them have stabilization fins and whatnot, which keep them generally on target all the way to target. So kind of a neat thing. Every single NATO tank in the modern day actually has a smoothbore barrel, except for the Challenger main battle tanks from Britain. They're the only ones with rifled barrels. They added a whole bunch of optic systems. They improved the cupola for the Commander. The Commander's cupola is totally different than the ones that were on the first Abrams. I believe that they've also tried to do some stuff with the power plant, because it's always been the Honeywell 1500 horsepower jet turbine engine, but I think nowadays they've done a little bit of tweaking to the filters on the modern M1A2s. They also added the smoke grenade launchers, which I don't believe were on the first iterations, and they also have started to try and implement on some of them trophy active protection systems, but those are fairly rare, and I don't really think that's the force standard thing. That's very, very rare from what I know. But still, these things have been upgraded a whole load. And the U2 has also gone through that as well, because over the decades, a camera from 1960, even the most advanced one from back then, is nowhere close to the quality of a standard iPhone camera today. So they have to definitely make sure to upgrade that sort of tech inside of the U2. But a humongous thanks to your support. Really cool to know that your husband flew one of them a few years ago, a couple of years ago. But a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on and into the next one.
All right, and our next one's going to go to none other than Jack Ray, who puts in a $22 support. And thank you very much, Jack, for that $22 support. He said, why does the U.S. send the U-2 out when they have satellites? It's the name, too, U-2. U-2 is so old they have a rattle and hum. U-2 isn't a drone. There's no with or without you. Oh, no, that's horrible, Jack. That's horrible. You said something like that. That's awful.
Why? Why is that horrible?
You don't get the reference because you don't know the music.
I don't know the music. No, I don't. Can you explain? Can you explain this?
So U2 is a band, right? It's a rock band, right?
Yeah.
They have a guy in the front, man. He's called Bono.
Okay, yeah.
They have a song called With or Without You, right?
Yeah. I'm tracking, yeah.
So you get it?
I think I get it. I think I get it at this point. I think I do. Yeah, you know what? I'm getting it. Yeah, I'm getting it. So a big thanks to your support. That took me a minute. I didn't understand the joke because I don't know much about modern music and nothing and all that stuff. But I did thank you greatly for the support and helping this channel to keep it running, Jack Ray. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we also wouldn't be able to make it clear for everyone that some of us, like myself, had just crawled out from under a rock that we've been living in our whole lives. So huge thanks to you so much once again. But one thing I can tell you, though, folks, is that while I don't know U2, I do know Nickelback. And I know that it's just popular in modern pop culture to hate on Nickelback, although some people say that they're actually pretty good. For some reason, it's just vogue to hate on Nickelback. Don't know why.
Also, by the way, you know, Bono's not the band. Like, I don't know why people were saying that in the chat, but Bono's a man.
I thought that's something that, like, dudes got, like Bonos.
The hell are you talking about?
Man, I don't know. I'm trying to come up with a joke here, man.
What the hell are you talking about?
Bro, what the hell are you acting like that for? Man, it's a damn pun on the name. It's a pun on the name, man.
I guess. I don't know. That's wild.
Man, well, it's going to get some laughs. It's definitely going to get some laughs once it catches up in the live chat. We're going to be seeing some laughs here from that one. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here is going to go. I'm not the only one that's. Look at the chat, man. That's crazy.
Hey, everyone's getting a good kick out of that one. Oh, man.
That's nuts. But moving into our next one here, this one's going to go to the Menage. And thank you for that $14 support. And they said, hello, enforcers, and thanks for the good news coverage. And this is a true $10 donation. And fun fact, if you send a super chat through the iOS YouTube app, I believe the fee might be bigger. And one from the chat, please.
And a big thanks to your support. I think the fee is standard across the board. It's 30% for any super chat. But I do thank you greatly for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And we are always greatly appreciative of support like yours, the Menage, because it helps us to keep the show running, keep the news going, and keep the crappy jokes rolling. And so humongous thanks to you once again, and we will make sure to take one from the chat in your honor. So Matthew, what do we got?
And the one from the chat goes to Kevin, who said, doesn't Saudi Arabia already have ground troops in Yemen?
Technically, yes, but it's more so in supporting an advisory role to the Republic of Yemen's armed forces than it is to really conduct any sort of ground operations. The Saudis were heavily involved in destroying or generally kind of crushing the Hadrami elites that the UAE was backing in southern Yemen, but since then, they generally moved them back out and into Saudi Arabia. So I hope that does address that the best I can, and a huge thanks to your support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a $10 support from Jesus Crisco. And thank you very much, Jesus Crisco, for that 10. And unfortunately, Nightbot deleted the comment that was in a super chat.
What the
Never
hell?
seen it do that before with the super chat. But I don't think he put the comment back in the chat, sadly. But thank you very much for the support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say, a big thanks to your support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running, Jesus Cristo. And we're always greatly appreciative of folks like you who help us to keep this thing running and keep it on air so we can keep the show rolling day in and day out. And so a huge thanks to you once again. And I see some people saying, Enforcer, U2 is timeless. You will love it. And when I say some people, I mean lovely lyrics. And I don't know. I don't know. Modern music, I don't know. It just doesn't appeal to me.
Not really modern. It's not really modern. It's old enough where it gets played in, I think, department stores occasionally. It's like, department store music.
That's modern music, Matthew.
That's not really modern in my book.
Well, it's modern in my book. Anything past the 1960s is modern in my book. Like the Beatles, that's modern music. That's kind of when Elvis, that's modern music. Like I consider everything around that era and onwards modern music. That's how I look at it. You can't change my rules. That's how I look at it. So I mean,
who was the singer that did the song? It was like that it was like the song just beat it.
That would be Michael Jackson.
Okay, I was getting confused there for a minute. I'm not sure if my brain's thinking very properly right now because the Tim Tams are holding me together. But yeah, I was like, who did that? I guess that was Michael Jackson. Have you seen that clip of Michael Jackson doing some like film set thing or something like that, where he's like dressed up as like a monster or something like that?
A werewolf.
He's like screaming, and he sounded so feminine sounding, like this dude like screaming, like he didn't even sound like the clip was really showing him screaming. It sounded really, really bad.
Man, it was pretty rough, but that post effects, man, was amazing. It saved. Like, imagine a music video had him going, it's like that would have lost all of its appeal, man. But beyond that, though, I would like as far as Michael, man, did you hear that like apparently like Michael Jackson's father was like kind of like a little abusive to him, like when I mean kind of like very
allegedly.
Well, he's dead, so I mean, like that's what Michael
Oh.
Jackson claims. That's what they put in the movie too. So I mean, like the movie that just came out. So I think if anyone's going to get sued, it's going to be the movie before us. Like I'm just going to be honest.
So
I mean,
that's why he was doing it the whole time. The that was for a reason.
man, that was for a reason. It was for a reason, Matthew. I mean, it was for a reason because he like when he was in the Jackson 5, like some people like Michael Jackson himself said that his father used to beat him, and that's what the song "Beat It" about was like get lost, dude. Like that's kind
Oh,
of
that was what was getting beat.
yeah, he was getting his ass beat like all the time by his
Oh,
dad.
damn! I thought I meant something else.
No, I think it was like telling his dad to just beat it or something like that. I think that's what the song was about. But like, he like according to like Michael Jackson's accounts, like his father like terrified him because basically it was just that he lived for his dad to make him money. It was kind of like one of those sociopathic narcissistic deals. Those, what I'm talking about, right?
Maybe.
Well, that's good enough. But like, but yeah, that's kind of his upbringing there. And also, Joshua said the littlest Jackson. Yeah, he was the littlest Jackson. That was his whole thing. Like when they were in the Jackson 5, man, they'd have like this intro where they'd be like, I'm such and such Jackson,
no.
the swingiest Jackson. And he was like the littlest Jackson or something.
His father jumped out of the back and said, "I'm the meanest damn Jackson." I'm the worst of the damn Jacksons. Oh man.
Yeah, bro. I saw that Drewski guy on YouTube like who does like the comedy stuff.
A little bit, yeah.
Dude, he did like a Michael Jackson like parody thing, man, where he was like the dad. He's like, I gotta get them steps, man. Like he's like pulling his belt off and everything in this trailer. It was honestly pretty funny, but beyond that though, outside of the funniness, it's kind of messed up. Well, it is very messed up actually. But anyways, big thanks to you so much once again for your support and helping this channel to keep on rolling. And Mandy, did we get that live chat yet?
And I'm gonna assume that we haven't.
Well, let's get it.
And this one goes to Apollo, who said, "Why is nobody talking about the nuclear threats from Israel to the U.S.?" I think that's because that's really not true. I think that's probably why nobody's talking about that for the most part, because I have not heard anything like that. Israel would not threaten the U.S. with nukes because that would not go well for them. But Enforcer, what say you?
Yeah, that ain't happening because one, they don't admit they have nuclear weapons, so that would be an admittance that they have a nuclear weapon. And two, why would they threaten to nuke the United States considering that we give them basically everything and kind of do everything for them in the Middle East? That would seem to be a little counterintuitive. So I would say, nah, that didn't happen. If that happened, we would be covering it, and it did not happen. So I hope that addresses that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have here a $12 support from Jack Ray, and thank you, Jack, as well. He said, Enforcer's top hits may include "It Don't Mean a Thing If It Ain't Got That Swing" by Duke Ellington.
That's the shiznit. Man, that's the stuff right there. That's the good stuff right there. Like, you gotta get, let's see here. You gotta get that Dean Martin. You gotta get, well, Dean Martin's a modern singer in my opinion, but you gotta get that Dean Martin. You gotta get, I'm trying to think of the other guy. Damn, I'm trying to think of his name. Oh, let's see here. He's very famous in like the 1940s. Bing Crosby. You gotta get Bing Crosby. You gotta get Glenn Miller and his orchestra, like that to me is like about as modern as I get before I'm like, it's losing its appeal to me. Like I don't know what it is. I don't know why I'm like that, but that's generally about where it is. Or, kind of like getting into the 50s and 60s. But I consider that, in my opinion, modern music, but that's about as far forward as I go in the music timeline before everything stops. So, like Dean Martin would be one of them, like I just gave that example. Or the other, like I forgot what they had a lot of like oh man, like chorales back then. Like it would be like the 4 and 3 people groups, and I always forget their names, but I like their music. They were pretty, like all of those groups were pretty good. Frank Sinatra, that's one of them. But that's about as modern as I get, quite literally. Like that is like the very cutting edge of modern music in my opinion, and then that is modern to me, and then everything from the 1940s back, that's the actual old school music, at least as far as I look at it. But a big thing's also one visual I said, you need to start listening to the drill rap. Nah, I'm good. Like man, get on your knees and pray to the Lord. Yeah, man, like, hell nah. Man, you know the song, bro. You showed it to me.
I mean, it's still an AO.
Man, it is an AO, but man, honestly, man, it's like that stuff's busted. Like, it doesn't sound good to me. Also, you got mumble rap, which is really big these days. And it's like I don't even get it because you don't even know what they're saying. Like, They're literally saying nothing.
That's why it goes hard. You can't even understand it.
Man, that one guy though in that one song that I talked about, man, like, yeah, man, like, he's like, that's rough as hell. But anyway, so that we are on to the next one.
And our next one here is going to go to none other than it's going to be Earth Lover, who puts in a 10. And they said, so after all that, America could end up paying Iran for permission to sell through Hormuz, and we fight them. They send us the bill and we pay it. And a self-proclaimed greatest deal maker is going on here.
I gotta say, it's a real tragedy, honestly. I don't really think anyone's believing that deal making stuff anymore. I don't see anybody like I don't believe anybody's really like buying that shtick anymore. Like except for a few people on the internet, and they're keeping the flame alive. But I haven't really seen a lot of people going, oh yeah, like he's got it all in hand. I don't see anyone saying that anymore. Because I think it's become obviously clear that he doesn't really know what he's doing. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running, and I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a $10 support from Earth Lover once again, who said, I wouldn't dismiss Lithuania's warning because it sounds stupid. Putin's record shows he does stupid, dangerous things, and we are literally watching the countdown to World War III. And take one from the chat in LSA.
I would agree with that, actually. I think that it is a significant threat and a concern, and we have to keep an eye on it, because if all of the countries, including the United States, are putting out warnings that something like that will happen in the future, then it most likely is going to be happening. So, a humongous thanks to you so much once again for the support, and we will make sure to take one from the live chat. So, Matthew, what do we got here?
All right, so this one goes to Humble Yours. He said, did North Korean forces attack Ukraine?
With ballistic missiles, from what we know, yes. From the Voronezh region, possibly, but right now, is a little bit up in the air. If we're saying North Korea attacked Ukraine just in like a general sense, yes, because they're providing KN-23s or Hwasong-11As to the Russians to attack Ukraine with. As far as the ground forces they have in Voronezh, I actually have to clarify this. We don't really know if they're operating yet. They are in Voronezh now, but we don't know if they're firing ballistic missiles at Ukraine yet. They may still be trying to get most of the unit there, get them generally on the field and operating, and then they might start attacks within the next few days. So with missiles, yes, but with their actual forces launching those missiles, we're not entirely sure on that yet. So a big thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel keep running and sponsoring a live chat, Earth Lover. And with that, we're on the next one.
And we also have a 10 from Game Theory, who said, why did the YouTube fan have to call his doctor? Because, oh no. I don't know about this one. This one's getting pretty graphic. I tell you what, that's crazy. Game Theory getting out there crazy with those jokes. I tell you what. But thank you, Game Theory, for that support. Nonetheless, we also have a 10 from Atrocious, who said, I haven't contributed for a while, but still been watching and wish you guys well. And thank you for what you do and just been poor lately.
Oh, well, thank you so much for the support. Any support is great support. We're just happy to have people watching. If people can support, we're totally fine with that. The channel is structured to be free to play. You can get on here, you have to spend a second of time watching an ad on these live streams. And I gotta say a humongous thanks to you so much incredibly for that support. And I gotta say that we're always happy to have you here and watching. You're always welcome here. And we're greatly appreciative of you. And the support means a lot to us, whether it be $1 or hundreds of dollars, we're always greatly appreciative. And so a huge thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on the next one.
And our next one here is going to go to Andrew Honeycutt, who put in a 10. And Andrew said, when the invasion started, Z rolled out the fancy stuff, the T-90s, etc. It's been established that Z has plenty of armor to expend along with the casualties. And is Z saving up, or are they scraping the barrel?
They're scraping the barrel, because they had T-90s at the start of the war, and they hardly have a tank seen on the front line yet. And it's not that they are putting them in reserve and they're holding back their best stuff for later. They're quite literally just out of everything. You can even see that in the scrap yards in Russia, or more so the tank graveyards. Most of those tank graveyards have been emptied out for them to refit and return to operational status their old and retired main battle tanks, and even those have largely run out at this point. So I hope that does address that the best I can, at least from what I know. And a huge thanks to you once again for helping this channel to keep on running, Andrew Honeycutt. And a very interesting question right there. And with that, we're on the next one.
And we also have here a 10 from Francisco Antonio Torres III. And thank you very much for that support. He said, when I sell the Hormuz, I listen to Jungle Cruise Q Music Loop in Disneyland.
Oh, man. That's a good one. You get on those ships inside of the Strait of Hormuz. It's like that Jungle Cruise like thing at Disney. You got that guy up on the bridge. Okay, everybody, we're going to be passing by the Iranian anti-ship batteries. Make sure to keep your heads low. The missiles go right overhead. It's like, man, honestly, that's pretty close. That's pretty close to the whole deal here. But a big thanks to you for support and how about this channel and keep it running. And I got to say, that's a pretty good one. Now, I wonder what in the world type of music we play when you're going through the Somali pirate lane, like Pirates of the Caribbean, yar, they have scurvy. Like, it's like, well, sadly though, the Somali pirates don't really have like the romantic image of like flowing coats and sailing ships and stuff. They're on like shitty fishing boats with a whole bunch of AKs, and they generally are looking starving by the time they're boarding the ship. So I mean, not really the same look as like the Caribbean pirates, or at least a romanticized idea of the Caribbean pirates. But
I wonder if the Houthis would attack a ship that was like blasting like that, that hardcore trap beats that people were talking about, where it's like rattling the windows on the ship and everything like that. And she's going along going brrr, brrr. It's like, would they still attack even if it had that going on?
All right, probably not, man. What'd be better, man, is to just like, what'd be the greatest? Hire Somali pirates to pre-board your ship, like in a port in like Egypt, and so when they go through there and the Houthis show up, like the Somali pirates can be like, "Yar, this is my ship, matey. Find your own." Like, and have like the fight between the Somali pirates and the Houthis, and, like, just pit them against each other. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it could.
They could do it, and there's nothing stopping them. There's nothing stopping them except for the intuition. But with that, I hope that does address it the best we can, and a huge thanks to you for the support, and how about this channel to keep on running there. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from Tabitha Silvers. She said, "Great job, enforcers."
And thank you so much for the kind words, and thank you for the support. We're always greatly appreciative and honored to know that so many people enjoy this channel, and we always try our best every day to keep the news as level-headed, reasonable, and well-reported and well-analyzed as it can be. And so a huge thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a $5 support from the Shiniznit, and they said, if you painted your whole ship blue and turn off your transponder, do you think ships could get through? Oceans are pretty big, and they have sonar, and LSA.
Yeah, they have surface search radars, so sadly that wouldn't work. Because the whole ability that they've been using to fire at ships is their surface search radars, and also to fire an anti-ship missile at a ship, you have to kind of have the surface search radar to be able to fire it off in the first place to know something's out there to shoot at it. So, sadly, painting the ship blue and trying to get through the Hormuz, sadly that will not work. But a huge thanks to you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on the next one.
And we also have here a 5 from Jeremy Jasmine. And thank you, Jeremy, for the 5. He said, "Love the work, boys. I know it's not much, but thank you. And do you know if the USA is using the Roadrunner drone interceptor yet? And why not?"
I wouldn't really be able to tell you if they were using that one or not. Unfortunately, I'd have to declare ignorance on that. But I do thank you greatly for the support and helping the channel to keep running. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from Cobra Commander. He said, "The Houthi Himmler." OMG, that made me crack up. And it sounds like he's auctioning off some hogs. But I know they're not into that. He said some other stuff, too.
Oh, yo! Big thanks to you for his support. And I had to come up with something on that guy, because that guy basically is that dude in Germany. But he's just a Houthi version of it. He's got like the same deal going on, basically. But a huge thanks to you for his support and helping this channel to keep running. I'm glad to know you got a crack out of that one. We love to know it. And so a big thanks to you once again for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on the next one.
And our next one goes to none other than Justin, who puts in a 10 Australian. And thank you, Justin, as well. He said, "Love the news and everything. It's firm yet unpersuasive."
And I gotta thank you greatly for the support, Justin. We try our best here to do everything the best we can. Of course, some of it just comes like naturally, like the jokes, they're either going to be good or not. But the news we put a lot of effort into. And I gotta thank you so much for the support and enjoying that it's firm yet unpersuasive. Because we're just trying to tell a story out of here. And we are telling it with a pro-American, pro-Western sort of a vibe, but still beyond that, we just want to report the stuff for what it is and lay out the facts for what they are. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on the next one.
And we also have here a 5 from Max Shibai, and he said, "For a Costco chocolate cake for Matt's blood sugar retention or regulation, LOL. Honestly, I'd tell you, like, I thought I could go with like a certain meal tonight, but it turned out that meal was not a good idea. Actually, that was not a good idea. The meatball sandwich did not quite cut it. It looks like it definitely fell short. But thank you very much, Max. And Enforcer, what say you?
And we got to thank you greatly, Max, for that support. It's incredible. It's fantastic there. And I also got to say, hopefully Matthew will be able to fix that blood sugar. Because I had plenty of food before the show. I eat well, 3 square meals, 3 square meals. Actually, I really only have 2, but 2 square meals. So, like, it's 2 square meals. And I got to say a big thanks to you for the support and help this channel to keep it running. And hopefully Matthew's blood sugar is stabilized. Is it?
I think it may have possibly. I'm still feeling a little out of my mind right now, a little bit because of it, but I think it's kind of getting there. I think.
Oh, well, Matthew, that's just the Middle East doing that to you. That's nothing to do with dietary reasons.
I mean, I don't think so. I mean, I can feel it. I can feel it internally.
Man, hit me with that arc. Man, like, I don't think so. Man, like,
I don't think you make sure you eat your greens and veggies and have a little venison on the side for a protein snack.
don't take the action. Like, it's like,
No,
man, that's what he says. That's what he says, man. I'm not saying that.
That's don't bring that up. Come on.
Oh, you no, because you're not a scientist. Well, you're not one either, bro. I was like, damn, bro, like whipping out that old trick like some of the cops do. Are you a lawyer? It's like, well, are you? It's like, man, it's like, who in the world? Like, no one's a lawyer here, so who are you to say? It's like, this is ridiculous. But anyways, beyond that though, a big thanks to your support once again. I do have to say that before we move on, and we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Plutonium Fever. He said, number 1, the best news there is.
Oh, and thank you so much for the kind words, Plutonium Fever. And we like to know that people think that this is the greatest news channel out there. One of the greatest, one of the best. It truly is. So many people come from miles around and they go, sir, it's such a beautiful show. No one could do it any better than you. And honestly, they're not wrong. No one can do it better than us. We're truly one of the greatest. Yesterday, we were number 21 in America for live streams. 21. Honestly, we ought to bump it up to number one. That'd be beautiful. People are going to call us up from miles around and they're going to go, sir, you run such a beautiful show, wonderful show, honestly. And that's why we're going to be absorbing every other YouTube channel in the news sphere. It's going to become a part of our own. We're going to call it Enforcer Blob. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be a big, beautiful channel.
He's the type of guy that he invited her over and said, here's a magazine with my face on it. Roll it up and spank me. That's right. That's the way to do it. Just like that. Roll it up. That's right. Look at that nice, beautiful face on that magazine. It's my face. That's beautiful right there. Look at that. Fantastic. It's not Vogue, but it's a little bit rogue, they say, sir. That picture, that's something, the way they put that on there. They printed it there with ink. That's what they do. Brand new term, ink. They inked it on the paper. That's what they do.
You know, everyone, I was just talking the other day, as a matter of fact, to some people in the United States, and they said, I've been a very naughty boy, and so they got to get the magazine, spank me with it, most preferably, after furniture shopping. Obviously, that's what we have to do.
You got to admit, I mean, that's different. That's pretty different. You got to admit. I mean, you got to be high T to like pull something like that off. Like pull out a magazine with your face on it and roll it up. You got to be real high T to do something like that and be like, here's this magazine. Go ahead and have this magazine right here. Just go ahead and whack me with the magazine, bro. It's like, what the hell's wrong with you?
You know, folks, out of everything, it's one of like the last things I could ever think of, like going on my way to be like, oh boy, I can't wait to be spanked with a magazine with my own face on it. Like, not really something that's in my itinerary anytime, you know?
I've always wished for this my entire life. I said one day I'll have a girl of my own, and they'll love my magazine so much they have to roll it up and spank me with it. Bro was out of his mind.
Well, it wasn't even a girl. So, oh, man, like, that's also the other thing. Like,
it was just some random girl. It wasn't really just anybody specific. It doesn't have to be anybody specific. It could be a guy. It could be anybody. He said, look at that nice-looking guy over there, sir. Look at him. He could just, look at him over there. It's like, that's something, sir. Look at that.
I'm talking about some kind of random girl, and she might work in films, but I'm not talking about the kind you see at the movie theater. Man, like, it's like, I don't even get it, man. It's like, that's something else right there. Something else, really. But anyways, outside of that whole rabbit hole right there, it's time for us to move on to the next one.
Dang, he was very struck by that one. So, next one. But our next one here goes to Streewee, who puts in the 5 and said, "Hey there, my account is still banned." And he said, "Also, I have a live stream train model like this emoji. It weighs like 300 pounds. I've never ran it yet, but it's cool."
Oh, that's pretty neat. And also, I got to thank Master for support. And sadly, I don't really know if we can do anything about that because there's like thousands of accounts that have been banned over the years, and it kind of just keeps them all in a giant database, and it doesn't even let us see all of them. But I do thank you greatly for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Game Theory. He said, "Why was Michael Jackson banned from the billiards club? He got."
No, don't read that. Like,
This
no.
one's not getting read right here. I tell you what, I guess. But thank you very much to Game Theory for that 5. We do appreciate it. We also have a 10 from Barry Pies. He said, "Speaking of protein, everyone needs some more collagen. It makes up about 30% of the human body, and if you don't have it, it leads to stiff veins, joint problems, and skin sags. ITP."
Interesting. Interesting. Do you work for the collagen industry? Do you work for big collagen? I'm just kidding with you, by the way. But a big thanks to your support and helping this channel keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to spread the good word that everyone needs to have some collagen. And I gotta say that collagen stuff, it's kind of gummy, you know. Like I believe our noses are made out of collagen, if I'm not mistaken.
Cartilage.
Cartilage. Whoopsie daisy. Like, I'm not really a biologist or a chemist or nothing like that. I gotta make sure that I sound extra stupid at this point. But beyond that, though, a big thanks to your support. Make sure to eat some collagen, folks. It's good for you, apparently. But a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from Andrew Honeycutt. He said, "Authoritarian regimes tend to collapse on the verge of economic collapse and prolong it as long as the superego persists." Doesn't that sound familiar?
I wouldn't know. Familiar? Oh, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of things that are familiar these days, lots of things, lots of things. You find a lot of examples in history of things that are familiar these days, allegedly. And that might be one of them, allegedly. Because, whenever you see someone around that really makes everything about them, and it's not about anyone else, that's generally going to be destructive for everyone around them, except for themselves. But a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep running, and I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 2 from Nisi once again. He said, "Can the KSA invoke the defense pact with Pakistan?"
Technically, they could, but we haven't really seen them be that apt to do that. I think that's more so against a possible nuclearized Iran than normal conventional threats, and that's why they may have not done that. But yeah, they could technically tap them in if they wanted to. It's unclear whether Pakistan would actually get involved or not. But a huge thanks to you for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on the next one.
And we also have here a 2 from the original Nosferatu. He said, "The Leaf Spring Army will never truly die."
And it never will. It never will truly die. It'll always be here. And a big thanks to you for the support. And helping this channel to keep on running. We're always greatly appreciative of it. And with that, we're on the next one.
And we also have a 2 from Plazoth. And thank you, Plazoth, as well, for that $2 support, as always. And we do appreciate that. And we also have a 2 from Purple Dinosaur. He said, "The M117 will look better on rails."
Like a train? Like a little train? That'd be interesting. I don't know. Like, honestly, that'd be an interesting maintenance away, like inspection car, get an M117, put the thing on the rails and have it rolling around. That honestly kind of be wild. Let me look at that thing again. Yeah, I could see that a little bit. You know what this thing looks like? It looks like a French VAB. French VAB. It looks a lot like this thing, actually. Which is kind of
The duck.
interesting. Le duc. Let that sink in.
Okay. Yeah, so just a big pause out of that right there. I was just saying Le Duck.
Man, he said that. I thought he was about to say something profound. But then silence ensued, and I was like, oh, let that sink in. But anyway, so that a huge thanks to you for the support and help with this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from Barry Pies once again. And thank you for the support once more. They said, "I'm just chef that works in healthcare. It can lead to high blood pressure due to veins not expanding, for example."
Oh, real? Interesting. I'll have to look into that. But a huge thanks to your support and the helpful advice right there. That might be helpful for some of us. Me. But with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a two from YHOOFD, and thank you for the $2 support right there. They did not leave a comment though, but we do appreciate that. We also have a two from Atrocious. He said, "I hope you've been surviving Utah on fire."
Oh, let's see how bad it is. Oh, look, fresh ones. Let's see. There's one right there. There's one. The wide mouth fire. The wide
Man,
mouth 2 fire, actually.
I got out for a short one today just to get out, so that way I wasn't like just sitting around all day long, doing my usual stuff. Excuse me, by the way. I think that's why I'm coughing actually, because I got out there and I went up to my local trail and I got an overlook of everything. And I looked out and I was like, there's, you literally can't even see the mountains. Like it was so smoky outside, you couldn't even see the mountains over there. And I was like, this is obviously not good. I think the AQI today was like 95 or something like that, which is like moderate to like bad air quality. Like the smoke's definitely around here.
Man, well, I mean, it's really bad up there in like Washington and Oregon right now. I don't know if you heard, man, but apparently there was a little arsonist that started burning down Spokane. And they're saying that the guy apparently in Arizona or something years back he shot and killed his dad because his dad asked him to do the dishes, and that was the guy who started one of these fires up here near Spokane right now.
Or at least allegedly, all that stuff right there.
Well, I didn't say the guy's name, so it's like, well, who's going to come and collect on that? I mean, really,
It could be the ghost of arson past, like could be the ghost arson past. Or could be like one dude that claims all arson's like, hey, I'm going to take offense to that.
But yeah, but that case isn't going to stand up at all. Like it's like it's like that one going to be frivolous. It's like who do we even mention by name? Nobody. So beyond that though, there's a lot of wildfires going on around here. The ones here in Utah aren't that bad, at least compared to the ones up north, like the Wide Mouth 2 fire. Apparently it was Wide Mouth 2 Revenge of the Wide Mouth. But yeah,
Wide mouth. Like, who named this fire?
man, apparently somebody who was getting nagged badly. Where they said, man, you got a wide mouth. And then when the fire came around, they're like, it's Wide Mouth 2, Return of the Mouth.
Yeah, return of the mouth. They said that's what they say. That's interesting, but yeah, maybe.
Man, what the hell is wrong? What the hell is wrong with you, man? What is wrong? You know what? Let's drop down here. Let's just drop down here. Let's take a minute to look at Richfield. I bet it's rich.
Oh wow, this is very grid-like.
Man, all of the cities in Utah are grid-like because they were all built by Mormons. I bet you that
Oh,
I bet you this street is like 100 south. Yep, look at that. Look, man, look at that. Yeah, 500 north, 400 north,
you
300
know,
north.
I actually appreciate that. Like, I actually do because, like, just as somebody that likes to have things, like in a good order, like not quite OCD, but like a little bit. It's very interesting to see such grid-like designs. Like, I kind of like I can kind of relate to that.
You know what's interesting though? They don't have a temple here in the dead center. Like there's nothing here. The church is over here, but they don't have a temple in this town. It's very interesting. Because if y'all don't know, folks, the roads are actually numbered out here from how far away you're getting from the temple in that city. So I can show y'all another example further on up at like Provo. And if you go to Provo, you can see that up here it's 200 north, 100 north, then you get to West Center Street. And then you find the next one that lines up with that. So that would be University Avenue. And there it is, the Provo City Center Temple, dead center of the city, like geographical center by how the roads are numbered. So
Those
that's
are
interesting.
expensive to build. Those right there. Those are very expensive.
What, those temples?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're like super expensive to build. I think this was like one of the first ones they built way back in the day though. So it wasn't like one of the new ones that they build with like the tithe money. This was built before the tithe money. This was built like off of literal like just back-breaking volunteer effort and sweat. Kind of like the actual temple here in Salt Lake was built. This one wasn't built with any money at all. It was literally built with no money. They just did it through volunteer work because it was expected of you if you were part of the LDS back in the day. The tithe thing only came about in the 50s and the 60s around there. That's when the tithe came into being.
Yeah, that's what I've heard too.
Yeah, so anything done or built in the LDS before the 1960s, I believe, all of that was done literally just off of volunteer effort and donations and like goodwill ever. Everything afterwards was done with ties, like for the most part. Kind of interesting sort of a dichotomy there. But also a lot changed. I've actually looked a lot, folks, because now it's a big part of where we live. I've looked a lot into the LDS history, and it's very interesting, like, to say the least. Like, there was a very big shift, and they went from being one thing in like their early history to literally a complete different thing by the 60s. Like, literally changed overnight. Because they said we need to be marketable, so like they completely changed everything. But I won't get into some things because I don't know if YouTube would like it. But like in the 70s, they decided that certain types of people were actual people too, and a couple of other things like that. Pretty wild stuff. Like, if you look into it and you look into the history of it, folks, it is a very interesting sort of a deal. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to the Shouldn't who puts in a 2 and said, I was called.
The shiznit. Yeah, sure. Like, yeah, you were called, yeah. Welcome. I hope you've been enjoying it here since you've been called forth. I hope you've been enjoying the show. And so a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep running. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, it is time for us to move on and into the next one.
And with that, folks, it's actually time to move into our live chat questions.
Huh?
Believe it or not, we are actually through our super chats at this point. We once again appreciate everybody for that support and helping to keep the channel running. And we have time to get some good live chats tonight. But first of all, though, jumping into our Morse code decoders, we have Paul, Kevin, Mason, Joni, Norm, Arabelle, Heroic Fluffiness, Kush, Koteric, Sire, and Brian. They said the Morse code says, well, if the Iranians are opening the strait, then why are they attacking ships still in LSA?
And that's the sound of money. Y'all got the dent on the nail? That's the Morse code message of the night. I gotta say that y'all got the dent on the nail once again. Truly amazing and impressive stuff right there. Truly. And I gotta say, honestly, the message is true. If they're about to open the strait, why are they still blowing up ships in it? Make that make sense. But a big thanks to y'all so much once again for getting that correct. And with that, it's time for us to get into some live chats there. So what do we got?
So our first live chat question goes to RC, who said, has Lebanon, Palestine, Yemen been taken over by Iranian proxy groups?
Wait, let me read that. Let me read that here. Let's see. Have been taken to an extent, sort of, but not entirely. Like, as far as Yemen goes, the Houthis control a part of Yemen in the ongoing civil war, but they don't control all of it. Hezbollah operates as a shadow government, basically in Lebanon, under the surface, that calls a lot of the shots, but they leave the actual Lebanese government intact to look like the legitimate face of the country. And in the West Bank, or Palestine, if you want to call the whole of it Palestine, not really, because the Israelis kind of are conducting a military occupation of the West Bank for the larger part, and like there's a lot that goes on with that. That's a lot to unpack, and honestly, not a lot of good things to unpack with it. It's pretty gross what the Israelis do to the people who live in the West Bank. But in Gaza, Hamas kind of runs the Gaza Strip with an iron fist, so they have completely taken over the Gaza Strip. But the whole of Palestine, if we want to call that Palestine, no, because the West Bank, absolutely none of that exists there. It really can't even exist at all. And then let's see, what was the one other region that you mentioned? Let's see, it was Lebanon, Palestine, Yemen. Okay, so covering all of those, Yemen, not really. It's a civil war, and the Iranians kind of control one of the major factions in that civil war. In Lebanon, generally, yes, they operate as the shadow government. And then in Israel, not really. Or Palestine, not really, because they only control the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. Absolutely not at all. Ever since the Second Intifada, that's been completely impossible for the large part because of the military occupation that exists there. And if you want to know more about that, folks, I would highly recommend that y'all go check out the brand new. Well, actually, I would recommend two things to go check out. I would check out the brand new expose documentaries made by, let's see here, I believe it's Channel 5, if I'm not mistaken, here on YouTube. That shows a lot of what it's like in the West Bank. And I'd also check out Louis Theroux's documentaries from way back in the day, in their like mid-2000s, and also the one that was made, I believe, in late 2023. So those are very interesting to look at, of what's going on in the West Bank, because you don't really hear about that at all here in the United States. But once you look at it, there really isn't a way to say that any of what's going on there is justified at all, because most of that would most likely be considered violations of human rights by the United Nations and most, I would say, civilized people for the most part. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Game Theory, and thank you, Game Theory, as well, for that support. They said, how will the new executive order affect recruitment from the territory of U.S. Samoa? With the executive order issued today, they are not citizens.
Um, the executive order will get shot down again. They'll probably get challenged at the Supreme Court if we're being entirely honest, and get shot down again. So it doesn't really have much of an effect on anything. Like generally, folks, the best way to put it is that if the president like writes an executive order and it says, from this point on, like it's some sort of a congressional act, like from this point on, this is going to be this and that. That's not even really enforceable according to the Constitution, and also it generally probably be viewed as unconstitutional, will be shot down. Because the whole birthright citizenship thing of just executive ordering away birthright citizenship, which is a constitutional amendment, didn't really stand up in the Supreme Court, and I think that this new attempt isn't going to either. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And big thanks to your support and help this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a $5 support from Andrew Honeycutt. He said, Andrew, do you consider the CSA an enemy of the Republic that tried to overthrow it? And should we revere the worst idea in history and what it stands for?
The Confederate States is an enemy of the Republic, but historically they never attempted to overthrow the country. They attempted to secede from the country and split the Union in two, to generally break away from the democratic process and also continue an injustice. So generally with that whole situation, I look at them as an enemy of the Republic, but they're not an enemy of the Republic because they were trying to overthrow the United States and just become the government. They were trying to basically destroy the democratic process and go do their own thing in rebellion of it. So that's the reason why they're an enemy of the Republic. Should we revere them? No, absolutely not. But there is a level in a way where you have to. It's kind of like how the Germans look back at World War II, where it's like that's just an unfortunate thing. Like we're not trying to go out of our way to like beat the South into the ground 150 years in the future. But at the same time, it's not like that was a good cause either. Is the way I look at it. So we kind of have to tread lightly. But I'm not saying tread on eggshells, but tread lightly around it. They were an enemy of the Republic. They were defeated and destroyed. But we're also not trying to make that a sin to bear for everybody in the South for perpetuity, to put it that way as well. So I hope that does address that the best I can, in my opinion. That's how I look at it. And a big thanks to your support and help this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a question here from I'm D. Stevenson, who said, if Russia attacks NATO and then NATO responds, and then Russia theaters nukes and NATO tries to call their bluff, do you think that Russia would actually use nukes, in your opinion? Allegedly, LOL.
I would say probably they might, because if they're going to lose the war and Putin's going to be out of the government and probably dead either way, what would it really matter if he's dead at the hands of a NATO nuclear response because of his nuclear actions, or whether he's ousted and then held for his crimes that the new Russian government would say they conducted, then most likely execute him? It basically is the same end result for him either way, and that's what makes me believe that there is a possibility that nuclear weapons could be used by the Russians, because at that point, it's a total loss scenario no matter what. So, if he has to take everyone out with him to see that NATO might eventually back off, he might actually go down that path. Because a lot of people look at, for example, Mussolini in Italy, who held on to power and kept things going until he got overthrown by his own Italian government in 1943 and got ousted. And he was quite literally willing to let everyone in Italy die to try and maintain power and try and stop the Allied invasion of Italy. And Hitler did the same thing. He continued on the war against the Allies and would scorch earth tactic everything. He didn't care what civilian casualties were incurred by the Germans or Allied nations here in our alliance, or what kind of damage that would cause and what kind of impact it would have. He kept it going no matter what, because if it was going to be a total sum loss, he might as well just make everyone try and lose in the process of him losing as well. So I think Putin might have a similar sort of a mindset to that. These sorts of nutty folks generally do. But a huge thanks to you for the support and help this channel to keep running, and I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on the next one.
And this one goes to Christian Cruz. He said, if Putin mobilizes those troops that will arrive in the middle of the Rasputitsa, and then the winter, and then Rasputitsa again, no cover, no leaves, won't they just be basically drone bait?
Pretty much, yeah. Actually, they will be. But the thing is that they can try and hold them a little bit farther back. and deploy them in a rear area until it's a ripe time for an offensive, and then they can move them up to the front. But if they mobilize them and then move them straight to the front, that is not going to be going well at all. So I hope that does address that well, in my opinion. And also, I just saw Andrew Honeycutt ask a follow-up question to his first question. He said, so we shouldn't revere things that go against the Republic. In my opinion, no. Anything that goes up against the Republic and tries to aim for its destruction or an usurpation of our democratic principles, those things should not be revered. So, for example, any attempts of insurrection or rebellion in the United States, very rarely would I ever say that any of them are worth their salt, unless they're trying to preserve something of the Republic. Like the Battle of Athens is something that we could revere because local people took it upon themselves to battle, quite literally with arms, the corruption that was taking place in their county that was perverting the free and fair elections that this Republic is supposed to have. But most of them, like the Confederacy, that was an attempt to quite literally break the Republic in two, to try and violate the democratic principles of this country and to conduct an injustice in the process of doing so, which isn't something to be revered. Neither would Nazi Germany ever be something that should be revered, which also attempted to usurp and destroy this country from within before we even got involved in the Second World War, or communism, which also attempts to subvert the image of this republic and its actions. I just don't really think that there is ever a way, unless if it is someone who is trying to truly preserve our original Enlightenment principles that this country was founded on, that anyone who looks to usurp or pervert the government could be looked at in a positive light ever, in my personal opinion. But with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a question from Brittany who said Turkey was in the initial pact, and is there a copy of the first one on the internet that we can see?
Sadly, not yet. They're going to most likely sign that and announce that tomorrow, from what we're hearing. So we probably won't get a copy of that until maybe a day later after that signing, because it'll take a little while for it to circulate through the internet space. Or if they're very tech savvy, which they might be, they might upload it immediately after signing. So I hope that addresses that the best I can from what I know. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to TS Actual, who said, could it be that the U.S. is slowly pulling planes out of the theater for when things pop off? This stuff today smells of regional war type stuff.
Highly unlikely, because if a war was about to pop off, we would actually want a large amount of forces present and operational in the area. Because once we remove a force from the area, getting them back in actually takes time. We'd have to fly them in. We'd have to set up their ground support. We would have to set up their operations. We would also have to get them generally briefed on the tempo at which things are going in the region. All of that takes time. And if we're getting ready for a regional war, we actually want them to already be in theater and already prepared to conduct combat operations in minutes rather than days. So I would say that in my personal opinion, withdrawing forces does not show that we're getting ready for a war. If anything, it shows we're doing the opposite. So I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a question from the original Nosferatu, who said if Russia and Putin used a nuke against a European country, do you think he would just go all out sending one to the U.S. too?
No, because that would break the escalatory ladder structure. Because even with nuclear warfare, there's an escalatory ladder, much like there is in a conventional war. And the escalatory ladder starts with the deployment, usually of one tactical nuclear weapon to the most emergent threat on a front line. So you throw a tactical nuclear weapon at a NATO battle group in Russia's scenario that is breaking through their lines and is about to completely crush possibly a whole army group. That's where the first tactical nuclear weapon would get used. Once that one is used, and only one, then NATO would have to go, damn, this is crazy. And they would be saying that. They would go, this is absolutely crazy. So we can either nuke them back and conduct a reciprocal nuking, which might start to see that tactical nuclear weapons are used front-wide, or we can try and stop this thing right here and possibly negotiate out of this conflict. But we don't know what they would be willing to talk about. And then that's the decision that we have to make. And then once we decide in the going along the whole escalatory ladder that we're going to respond with a reciprocal tactical nuclear weapon, then Russia might respond with several on our army groups, and then we are going to nuke them with several tactical nuclear weapons as well. And all of that at that point is happening on the front lines. Once the tactical nuclear fallout settles, if we want to put it that way, one army or the other is going to still be winning at that point. It's probably going to be NATO. And so we're going to keep pushing into Russia. And at that point, that's when Russia goes, we have used the tactical nuclear weapons and they really haven't done anything. and they have used tactical nuclear weapons against us, so they're showing that they're willing to use tactical nuclear weapons to achieve victory. They are going to crush us if this keeps going, so our only option is to completely wipe out the threat by destroying the enemy states, and then that's when it gets to a strategic nuclear level. So throwing tactical nuclear weapons at a NATO front and then flinging like a strategic nuclear weapon at the United States completely breaks that escalatory ladder, because it goes from step one to the final step in the escalatory ladder and could lead to an immediate strategic nuclear exchange with the United States, where we fire off everything at Russia in response to that single one. Because we might be assuming that at that point our radar systems or our detection systems are faulty, and they might just be picking up a singular ICBM, when in fact there could be dozens, if not hundreds, of them airborne at that point. So we might send a full-blown response right back to Russia over just a singular nuclear weapon, because we don't know how many are actually in the air. So I hope that addresses that the best I can, at least from what I know, but I generally say they just keep it at probably one tactical nuclear weapon somewhere in the Baltics at the very opening of a nuclear confrontation. So with that, I hope that does address that well, and we're on to the next one.
We also have a $10 super chat from Earth Lover who said, can America scale drone production fast enough to sustain a major global war, or would manufacturing capacity become one of its biggest strategic weaknesses in LSA?
And a big thanks to you for the support. And the answer to that is yes, but it requires the Department of Defense to be on top of things and the government to be on top of things and to generally spurn that kind of production. Because if we're looking for the private sector to do it on their own, or the war industries to do it on their own, they're not really going to do it. But if the U.S. military understands, or the Department of Defense in a broader sense understands, that they need those sorts of weapon systems, and they start funding those sorts of companies to kind of jumpstart them in a way, we could definitely see that we are able to produce enough for a major war. And so a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. And I also saw Saint Sir Nicholas say, I take issue with the framing. There's no precedent for tactical nukes. We can't assume anything. Well, there is a precedent for tactical nuclear weapons, not in a sense that they were ever used on a battlefield, but in the doctrinal sense, there is a lot of written doctrine from throughout the whole of the Cold War, from about the 1960s to the 80s, on both the NATO side and also the Soviet side, that shows exactly how they would have been used. And really, over the course of the entirety of the conflict, the only thing that changed is that the bombers were largely removed from the strategic equation and ICBMs replaced them because they were far faster and more efficient. But for the larger part, on the tactical level and the escalatory ladder level, the strategy remained the same, of a strategic escalation. So as far as a war precedent, there is no war precedent. But as far as a theoretical doctrinal precedent of escalation, there are quite a many of them. And there's plenty of writing from the Soviets and also NATO of how that sort of escalation would be conducted. And so I hope that addresses that well. It also gives the reason why I'm speaking about that, and what sounds to be a very laid out and methodical way is because that generally comes from the nuclear doctrine of the Cold War, particularly from the late 80s. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a question from Zerkits who said, do you think it's possible that Putin's soldiers commit mutiny and refuse to launch the nukes?
There is always a chance of that, but we're not really sure how prevalent that would be, because if every single battery commander in Russia got the order to fire off their nukes, we're having to really rely on 100% of those battery commanders not following the order. And some of them are going to follow the order, because some of them would be willing to launch the nuclear weapons. And so there is a risk to that. We would have to generally assume in that situation that 100% of all of the battery commanders are not going to follow the order, or that the battery, well, more so the theater commander, if we want to call it that, in Russia doesn't follow the order, and even disseminate that down to the actual battery commanders themselves that fire the nuclear weapons. So I hope that does address that, at least the best I can. And with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
This one's going to go to Scott Hebert, who said, how long do you guys think Iran can supply its proxy groups with supplies if they stay engaged in war with Western forces?
They really can't supply them right now, but that's the reason why Iran builds up significant stockpiles, is that they generally try and build up stockpiles that are large enough that they'll be able to last for in a well foreseeable or even an unforeseeable amount of time. And that's kind of really what they're planning on, is that if the Houthis have enough missiles and drones to fire off, they're able to fire them off continuously for a couple of months. we might go here in the West, damn, they have so many of them, we don't really know when they're running out because we haven't even seen them run out yet, and it's been going on months. And that's generally what they're looking for. So we don't know the exact number that they have stockpiled, because it's not really about continuous supply, it's more about the weapons stockpiles they have, and we really don't know how many stockpiles a lot of these proxy forces have, but we're assuming that the Houthis have a tremendous amount. So I hope that does address that the best I can, and we're on to the, actually, I
Second to
think,
last.
second, well, I was about to say third to last, but second to last question of the night.
So this one goes to none other than Bob, who said, if we and others are so short on interceptors and munitions and it takes years to recoup another sizable amount, then what's the real plan on how to continue without boots on the ground?
Unfortunately, there really isn't a good way to continue because we have no way to defend the material base that we have inside the Middle East, which are the air bases and the critical infrastructures of Gulf states. Then we are largely conducting attacks on Iran, which the Iranians are defenseless to, but then the Iranians can counterattack with attacks on us, which we also have no defense to either. And so we end up at a zero-sum gain where the damage that we inflict on Iran in par is being inflicted upon us and our allies. So sadly, unless if we have some way to defend against this stuff, it really is a zero-sum gain conflict from this point on. And that's why I'm saying that we should just focus on reopening the Hormuz. Because if it is, at least we could get a little bit of a shining grace out of the whole thing, that the oil could flow out of the Hormuz by the end of it, whatever is left. So I hope that does address that the best I can, at least from what I know. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the last person to put in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Nicholas, who said, what's the play here? And I would say the major U.S. attack on Iran has to happen, but it needs to be the biggest one yet. And on the other hand, the Patriot supply being low is concerning.
I would say that the action forward, in my opinion, should be to continue the coastal campaign against Iran and see if that actually breaks the blockade. If it doesn't, then we'll have to conduct a limited ground invasion on the Strait Islands. Is our last resort generally to see that the straits reopen and then conduct convoy escorts to try and get the oil out of the Persian Gulf. That's what I would say should be done. Generally, large attacks against Iran are great for the papers and great for the press because they're really cool headlines, but sadly, they don't really do a lot in the strategic sense to just drop a whole lot of bombs to get a good headline. So we have to make sure to have some sort of a strategic ambition and a strategic goal in mind, which should be reopening the Hormuz at a minimum. And so I hope that does address that incredibly well. And before we round this thing out, we actually got one more $10 super chat from Game Theory. And Game Theory said, one last one. Well. I tell you, I thank you for the support, Game Theory, and help this channel to keep running. I don't think I can read that one. But that's a good one, though. That's a good one right there. And with that, folks, we've reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank you all so much once again for watching. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure to be able to run this thing for y'all tonight. Over the course of the stream, we had a peak viewership of 16.1 thousand people, and almost 100,000 people watched the show. We're about 2,500 short. But still, nevertheless, a humongous thanks to each and every single one of y'all once again for watching. We're always entirely honored and greatly appreciative of y'all spending your time here. And with that in mind, we will see you all tomorrow to cover the next 24 hours of the news from around the world. And if there is a short war video to be made, I, the Enforcer, will be the one making that short war video. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, Haram Slava, long live the Least Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, we will see you all tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern at our usual regular time, of course, to cover the rest of the news throughout the day, and maybe on a short war video midday if there is enough news to cover. But in the meantime, though, we appreciate you all very much once again, all 100,000 roughly people that were here tonight. And of course, we will see you all tomorrow. And with that, Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, get some rest, and good night.
For Straße.